We've been fighting a long time, and we have all lost so very much, so many loved ones gone. But you are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It's that time again. It's time for your weekly SITREP. It is December 1st. Man, 2021 has gone by with a quickness. For guys, I'm Aaron, otherwise known as Sampson on here. And then I'm here with my brother Daniel tonight. What's going on, Daniel?
Oh, not too much, just living a life that he's given us and can't wait for tonight. I'm super bummed that we didn't get to do it last week. Just with everyone's schedules and everything just didn't work out too well. But so glad to be back at it tonight. Really excited.
Yeah, because there's a lot to cover tonight. For those that are tuning in for the first time or haven't seen our previous, we've been doing a short, 3 or 4. I think this is the 4th episode of our Apocalypse series, and we'll probably do a couple more. I'd say we hit about the midpoint at the end of 3, and we've got, maybe 2 episodes left to cover Revelation, and then we're going to cover some other stuff with Daniel and some extra biblical stuff. So we're super excited to go through this, and we've got some really cool things coming up. This one is titled Victory of the Lamb and His Overcomers, because I think that's kind of what we see in here, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's going to be a really good kind of a cookie cutter example of what it looks like to overcome in the world. As all this stuff happens, we have some really good instructions and some really good don't do's, as we're looking through this. So I think it's going to be really important, and we know the promises. We know how the story ends for the people that are found in Him. So,
yeah. I know we got a few people that are just tuning in. So if you guys are just watching on the YouTube channel or even on the Facebook, guys, jump in, say hi. We want to see who you guys are, see who's in here. So we're going to get this chat bar rolling over here on the side. So start getting the conversations going. Other than that, man, before we jump into anything crazy going on? Other than the normal, some variant and school shootings, and there's a plethora of things that seems like it's on repeat on the news. This is nothing really new from what I'm seeing. How about you?
Yeah, he said, in this world we'll have trouble, but fear not, because I've overcome the world. Right. Yeah. So they're recycling their same stories, the same old things, selling all their fear. And we're just going to let it roll off our backs like water off a duck. Right.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Where did we end up last? I think it was 13, I think was where we finished up.
We went through 13. I think we'd be jumping into 14 for the reading part, and then just kind of go until we need to call it quits, and definitely want to open it up for more questions again.
Yeah,
I'm really enjoying the fact that we get to interact with you guys and at least give it the old college try with answering, just kind of hearing you guys' perspective and kind of sharing that, because I think that's the beautiful part of what we're doing, is that, there are different perspectives out there, and it's just who says we can't come together and study, read it out, and see what he uncovers for us as we go through it again. Some of us for the umpteenth time, and we're still learning new stuff.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. That's one of the things we talked earlier this afternoon, and I'm like, man, I'm still I'm going through and I'm finding new stuff and finding things that hint or apply, because coming up, and I think I said this earlier when we were talking, that I've come from this line of eschatological teaching that has been 50 different ways from Sunday, where they try to fit and mash everything from Western civilization and Western cultures, everything from Holocaust and Adolf Hitler to modern nations and countries into this. And then, realizing that just about every Christian group from the time of Yeshua's, death, burial, and resurrection has thought that they were in the end times. And some probably had more evidence than not to believe
Sure.
that they were.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of persecution, and it was in the Levant, that Mesopotamian area where, all of these things were forecast to be happening. So, for us to look at it from a Western perspective now and be delving into it without the understanding of a lot of these things, it's difficult to try and say, well, John wasn't talking about future tense things. He was talking about things that people would know and recognize that were around him. And, those are things that we kind of have to have that perspective to see what that represents in our modern time. So, yeah, it's been cool. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I was even just talking to you earlier, just like how much that it's reignited my, because I think I shared a little bit about my testimony that Revelations was kind of the first book that I read after coming back into this walk. And, you read through Revelation and come out with a whole bunch more questions. And then you're like, okay, well, I'm not getting these questions answered. So I should probably start reading something else and try to work on some like stuff that's applicable to my life and whatnot. And then, go back through that cycle. And now just as we're going back through, just having that renewed passion for, looking and studying out these things that, like I said earlier, that are promised to us, these promises that are in here, like we talked about last week, the, call for patient endurance, for, on the part of the saints that are going to be here on the earth throughout all this this tribulation that's going on, all the craziness that's happening, so crazy that people are falling over and their hearts stopping because of what they're seeing that just doesn't jive with their version of reality. And so as we get back into this, it's just reignite that passion to study it out more. And I don't know, I just feel like this time I've come out with some answers to some of the questions I've had for a long time. I mean, I had never gotten answers from other people. And maybe that was my problem the whole time. I was looking to another man to give me those answers as opposed to going and studying it out myself and, letting the Spirit be the one that teaches us all truth and brings all that stuff to our remembrance and whatnot. So just really, really cool and really excited to get back into it tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple of important things. I for those of you guys that are tuning in, that most of the people, I think we get a lot of bleed over from Through the Black's channel. Well, they did have a channel here on YouTube, but I know a lot of the people that watch this show also watched Tom and Jared, and they just relaunched their show. So I think today, early this morning, was their first show. And I think Ian, our old co-host, Mr. Chadrick, I think he was on that show this morning. I didn't get to watch it because I was working, and man, today's been a busy day. But it's awesome to see them back on. I know they're not on YouTube, but they're on Rumble. They've got it through the Real Dark News. You can watch their shows that they're playing through there. So you guys make sure, if you don't know, go check them back out and support them because they're back on, after getting booted off of YouTube. So big shout out to the guys from Through the Black. Happy Hanukkah, guys, for those of you that celebrate it. I think we're on the third day of Hanukkah by, the Gregorian calendar, whatever. If you're even that,
the powers that be that say this is the third day of Hanukkah.
Yeah, man. You want to talk about something crazy? It's like one of those things. Like I added a bunch of people like that were in these communities. I said, oh, this person's 500 friends with somebody else from the Take on the World community or whatever. So I've added like at least, because I think before I got into this, I had about 2,000 Facebook friends. Now I have almost 5,000, just shy of 5,000, somewhere around there. And so I've added about 2,000 some people. And now when I open up my Facebook, I am almost like, I don't even want to get on Facebook anymore because I see so much negativity and so much like the whole Hanukkah thing is like people are bashing and abusing each other just like they did with Christmas. It's like, oh, you go from Christmas and then now you're into Hanukkah and this pagan this and pagan that. And this isn't one of the feast days. And, it's like, yeah, you can make a God out of anything, guys. I mean, it doesn't have to be a specific holiday. It doesn't have to be a specific day. It doesn't have to be, it can be money. It can be inanimate objects. It can be people. Like that's one of those big things about like not putting something before God. And like this whole idea that like, I think Paul said it best, like when you're understanding these, you can have all the knowledge and you can have all the understanding, and you can know all these things, and you can speak in the tongue of angels, and you can do all this. So if you do it without love, it means absolutely nothing. And some of the ways that I'm seeing people put things out there, people are just trying to find, truth and trying to do the best they can. And this whole, if you don't want to, if your spirit tells you not to celebrate Hanukkah and not to do Christmas and all that kind of stuff, I have no problem with that. You do you. You know what I'm saying? And if you want to spread truth, that's fine, but you have to do it with a loving heart. And man, some of the things that I've been seeing lately have just been ridiculous, and just the way that people are approaching it. I mean, one person on my Facebook feed said, well, if you celebrate Hanukkah, which we don't really celebrate Hanukkah here, we've got like a little candle thing that you push a button and it lights a light up. But we give some presents to my son because his mom, they do Christmas and stuff like that. So we kind of do a semi kind of mishmash of that kind of stuff. So, but we're not like deep into it. We read the Maccabees and just kind of talk about the story and like a remembrance thing, but we don't like delve into it and spin the dreidel and do all kinds of stuff like that.
Sure.
But just the way, like, somebody was posting up saying, if you celebrate this or whatever, then just unfriend me and blah blah blah. I'm like, what kind of heart is that like you can't associate with somebody who's not as far along as you or whatever. Like it just bothers me. Like I can't even, I had less, like it was easier for me to get on to Facebook with my secular friends than it is to get onto Facebook and see all of the strife and issues I see getting on to Facebook now with all of these Facebook believer, truth or whatever. And I'm like, I don't see the fruits, man. It sucks because that's where my main communication with a lot of people is, through Messenger and through Facebook and stuff like that. I don't even want to get on there because it just, the attitudes of so many people out there. I mean, do you see that kind of, I know you were off of Facebook for a long time, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think even now I've limited to like 20 people that I've even accepted friend requests from, and people that I have met in person and that I've seen, good fruit from, like you were talking about earlier, because the other stuff, it just puts me in a funk, man. It's just, people left the church, in droves looking for, the truth, and they found a little bit of it. And then you join this community and it's just some of the most hateful outlashing, attacks on people for, like you said, just not being as far as long as you are in your journey. Like, how is that something that qualifies you to cast any amount of judgment or shade on, just because they haven't, got to the same point as you are, on your journey? And I don't know, I think that's the part where it's just like, I feel like we talked about it before, but I think when we were talking about the 7 churches, right? And you have like this slow funneling and whittling down of the body into these mature groups in Smyrna and Philadelphia, right? That's kind of, we see the most mature fruit from those 2 groups. And the way I'm seeing stuff happen these days, I'm slowly getting more and more on board with that understanding of it, just because it's like, oh God, I'm leaving this community, like, because I don't have the emotional capacity and the emotional maturity to deal with all of that on a daily basis. And I want to be the one that brings healing. And so many people are just causing so many more scars and creating so much unbelief in people who are just now wanting to know more and just now on their on their journey into more truth and more understanding of the word and a closer relationship with the Father. So yeah, I mean, it really is sad. And I probably come off pretty critical of this community in some way, shapes and form, but I mean, it's my heart. Like I think if we're following the example that was set for us by Messiah, I mean, we should be loving and healing before we cast a single word of judgment or instruction or criticism towards anybody. Because as soon as someone starts getting criticized for their understanding of a certain thing, what are they going to do? They're just shut down and just not hear anything else you have to say. and they're going to go looking somewhere else. And then you have all this new age mysticism and new age secularism that's going to accept them with loving arms and say, yeah, man, it's all about just feeling love and doing whatever you want. And you are your own creator, you're your own God. And they're going to accept them with loving arms. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump over into some of that stuff.
Yeah.
When we look at the fine line that exists between, the deception that the enemy has created in that whole movement, and the very similar, I don't know, sight lines that exist in that movement. So it breaks my heart to see people that think that they're helping, but it's turning so many people away. And so I'll get off my soapbox, but
I think that's like kind of like the nature of man, though. It's like you get a little nugget of truth, and then all of a sudden, the pride kicks in. And and we don't, we love everybody, like even the people that I'm having issues with, and seeing some of the content. Like, I hope that some of our messages can reach out to those people, and by example, and I came from that kind of environment where it was like, I had posts on my Facebook from probably 10 years ago that says I'm not racist, I hate everybody equally. And that was literally my thing. Like, I had an inner circle of people, and then everybody else, I didn't really, I would tolerate you and I'd put on face. But, right. I didn't have anything. You didn't offer me anything. I wasn't, I was going to offer you anything,
Yeah.
And this community has the truth, has the answers, and is just lacking in the love and the, like, taking people in and nurturing them rather than beating them over the head. That's why most of us left the church. It was because the abuse of the church, or the lack of nurturing that we needed in truth. And then we turn around and we become the gatekeepers of truth, and we do it to somebody else. It's hurt people. And, the reason why we have these conversations, anybody that's listened to the show for a long time, this has been an ongoing conversation we have, especially with social media. There's something about the anonymity of the internet, even though, you may have your pictures up there, but the fact that you probably wouldn't say a lot of things that you say on the internet, that if you saw me to my face, you wouldn't say those things. You know what I'm saying?
You're just scary, though. Right? No one wants to mess with the 6'3" Viking. Right. No one chooses you out of a crowd to pick on.
Right. But that, that's kind of the thing, though. Like, if you wouldn't say it with Jesus standing next to you, or Yeshua or whatever, then, we probably shouldn't be saying it on the internet. It's kind of like one of those. I think I had a post not too long ago that was like, out of your mouth speaks the abundance of whatever, or you posteth on Facebook, because it's literally the same thing. Out of the abundance of your heart. You don't have to say it out of your mouth. You're putting it through the media form that we have now out onto the internet for thousands of people to see, and it doesn't take very long for one of us to say something stupid, and it could go viral. Somebody snapshots it, and
sure.
It becomes a terrible situation. And not only is it the people who are your brothers and sisters looking at this, but the world looks at these things, and they're just pointing at us, and they're saying, see, those Christians, it doesn't matter if they're Roman Catholic or they're Baptists or they're truthers or they're Torah observant, they're all the same, and we're not going to win people over with that kind of mentality and that abrasive behavior. So, it's just something to keep in mind, guys. It's something that, like, I just hate seeing. I hate seeing that bickering and battling back and forth when we have so much going on in the world that we should be praying about. That if you want to have this, you can't call yourself a follower of Christ, or a Christian, or a believer, or, say that you follow Yahuwah, or Yahweh, or whatever you guys want to call him. You can't say that you have that if your heart is not in line with his will, and his will is to love people. Jesus, said it best. He said there's two commandments: love God and love others. Like, those, all the rest of the commandments hang on those. And if you can't do those things, what makes you think you can do 613 of them and still make Yah happy? You can't. You can do all those works if you want to, but if you're not following those things, then you're not doing them for other people. You're not being a humble servant. You're doing them for yourself. You're just trying to find another way into heaven by works. And Paul talks a lot about this. You're not gonna get anywhere with your works. Your works are like filthy rags. So I got to get off my soapbox, so we're going to be talking about this for 2 hours.
Yeah. But I'm with you. I hear you, and it's like you said, if there's anything that I can pray for, it's that this show, if it reaches one person, that helps them be self-reflective on if that's what they struggled with, and struggled with the the taming of their tongue and cursing the same people that they're trying to bless them with. If one person out of the entire time we do this show hears what they need to hear, then let that be what it is. But I wish that more people would take the time that they spend arguing over this thing and pray for those people. Pray for those who obviously have missed the point, who aren't displaying that fruit. Pray your butts off for them, that they will have a better understanding of what their heart should look like, and have fruit that matches that, right? So on that note, we should probably jump into some prayer and of our own and let the Spirit lead us. He's already got us both talking, so he's going to show up tonight for sure, right?
Yep, amen.
Yeah, Father, we just thank you so much for all that you do, the works that you've got in motion in our lives, in our circles. There's so much good stuff that's happening. There's so much restoration and healing happening in your body. Father, we just pray that you continue that work. We pray that you would continue to soften hearts to hear your love wrapped up in a burrito full of absolute care and compassion and empathy for others that are struggling. We pray that you'd utilize us and the words that we speak to uplift and edify those around us, to where they would be, drawn closer to you. We just pray these things, Father, for those in our immediate circles and those that just need someone to pray for them and no one's praying for them. Father, we include those people tonight, and we lift them up to you, Father. We thank you so much for our families, our health, everything that you've got going on for us, Father. We just thank you for your provision and your mercy. We ask all these things in your Son Yeshua's name. Amen.
Amen. All right, so you guys are following along with us. We are going into Revelation 14, and you got that ready to share?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Let's see what we got here. I coming across okay?
Yep.
Awesome.
I will make us a tiny bit bigger here. Oh, not too big. There we go.
All right. This is Revelation 14. It says, then I looked and saw the Lamb standing on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a sound from heaven like the roar of many waters and the loud rumbling of thunder. And the sound I heard was like harpists strumming their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders. And no one could learn the song except for the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who have not been defiled with women, for they are virgins. They follow the Lamb wherever he goes, and they have been redeemed from among men as firstfruits to God and to the Lamb. And no lie was found in their mouths, and they are blameless. Then I saw another angel flying overhead with the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth, to every nation and tribe and tongue and people. And he said in a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship the one who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and the springs of waters. And then the second angel followed, saying, fallen is Babylon the Great, who has made all the nations drink from the wine of the passion of her immorality. And a third angel followed them, calling out in a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives its mark on his forehead or on his hand, he too will drink the wine of God's anger, poured undiluted into the cup of his wrath. And he will be tormented in fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment rises up forever and ever. And day and night there is no rest for those who worship the beast and its image, or for anyone who receives the mark of his name. Here is a call for the perseverance of the saints who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. And I heard a voice calling from heaven, telling me to write, blessed are the dead, those who die in the Lord from this moment on. Yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labors, for their deeds will follow them. I think that's a good point to pause there real quick. Quite a bit in that little chunk that we can talk about. Anything that jumped out at you?
Yeah, there were. There's quite. I've had different perspectives at this 144,000, and I think we've kind of talked about this. Like when a lot of times when they count this, like when they counted armies, they counted the men in fighting age. So I've had different perspectives on this, and I haven't really settled on anything. But where this could be, I've had people that have given good arguments for, aborted children, for young men who were born specifically for this time, somewhere between 13 and 20 years old or something like that. There's evidence that they had these kind of watchmen, that the ancient Hebrew warriors had these groups of men. I think there's a division in, I can't remember where that was at, where they had like it was like 14,000 or something like that, or 12,000, and then they went on a cycle of every month they would bring this new group in, a new group out. So I've heard a lot of different things for this, but you brought a good point on this, that this may be more than 144,000. It's just counted as the 144,000 fighting age men who were there, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I think that's like, was it going back to numbers? Is that where we get some of that? Maybe like 19 or 20. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but when they were instructed to number Israel, the number that they had for each tribe was actually the number that was documented was the military aged males. I think it was 20, everyone 20 and older, all the males. And so that obviously would include women and children in that final number. So the 144,000, I used to think that, oh man, that's literal, there's only going to be a remnant, very small number of people left on the planet that have planet, excuse my language, were left at the time, that were redeemed from the earth and whatnot. So, but I think my perspective's changed on that a little bit, that it's probably more, including all the women and children. And so that's kind of just where I'm at right now. I don't think it matters. It doesn't have any like lasting weight if we don't understand like who the 144,000 are.
It doesn't for us per se, but there are other, like Jehovah's Witnesses and things like that they base a lot of their stuff, their perception on this 144,000, that these are an elite. You're trying to vie for that position, which I never understood with Jehovah's Witnesses. If there's only 144,000 slots, why do you go knock on the door and try to convert somebody? Doesn't that kick one of your friends out? Like,
right.
So I never really understood that, but there is a lot that has been taken out of context from this. Now, the one thing that does get me is the Revelations 14:4, where it says that they did not defile, and that's a weird term to use when you're talking about a relationship, having intimacy with a woman, but they use the term defile yourself here, which you don't see really in any of the other text unless you're talking about idolatry, or sexual immorality. But this with women in the Greek, or woman, specifically a wife. So there's something that's being called out here that I think we're either overlooking, or like, as I personally, it calls them virgins. It calls them, it says that they didn't fornicate with women. So they're like a set apart group of men that either may be too young, or there may not have been any women. I kind of look at like this end times scenario leading up to this as a children of men scenario, where there's not a whole lot of people having kids anymore. I think that's really kind of from my perspective at looking at this, it may be from the things that are going on right now, or in our
different type of eugenics and whatnot.
Right. There's some kind of process that stops or ceases the rebirthing or the birthing process, because why else would man want to extend their life? The reason why biblically we would procreate is because we're no longer in the same framework that Adam and Eve were, or the angels are, where we exist without dying. But because we exist and then we die, now we procreate to continue our genetic lineages on. And the fact that they don't do that in this, to me, just, it's like there's a reason why they're not. They know this is the last generation. There's no way that they can have kids. A plethora of things that I look at when I see this. But the last one was the blameless. I think that is the same word that's used for like spotless and without blemish, that we see multiple times all the way back into Torah, where it's talking about like they're found, like I think Noah was described like that, right? Without blemish. It's that same kind of wording that's used there. So that's interesting too.
Yeah. And I think the part that I always kind of just glazed over is that there was a lot of, I've heard the perspective that these were people that were always, in heaven with with Yeshua and whatnot, and they were coming back with him and whatnot. But it's pretty clear that it says they were redeemed from the earth, and at some point, the only people that are like that have the need to be redeemed is if they weren't without blemish, at some point, right? Sure. So I think this may go a little bit deeper, maybe into even more like the spiritual realm, and have some more spiritual ramifications that the defiling that's talking about with women may not just be like a physical thing, but we have a whole lot of context around this chapter that's talking about the whore of Babylon, the one that rides the beast, and then here just in a few verses it's talking about fallen is Babylon the Great and whatnot. And so there's a whole lot of other context around here that may have some tie into this that we just aren't seeing right this second, maybe. But it's obvious that they were at some point not blameless. They were redeemed. Obviously they're following the Lamb, so it's the Son that's the Son of God that's redeemed them, and they chosen to follow him. No lies found in their mouths. They're blameless now after they were redeemed, right? So
yeah, because they does call them the first fruits. So
exactly. So that's my only add into that, is that there's probably a little bit more to that one than most people try. And like we've already talked about, people try to jam it onto anything that makes sense or advances their own understanding of it. But I don't necessarily know that we have to do that. It's going to be. I think that they set a really good example for us. And that's one takeaway that we should be able to do, is that, hey, they're following the Lamb wherever he goes. It's obviously good not to have a lie found in your mouth. That's a characteristic of them, and that they are not, if the defiling that's being talked about is more of a spiritual idolatrous type of interaction. We need to make sure that that's not something that we have in our hearts, because it goes on to talk about, I think right here in the next few verses. I don't know how this kind of fits in, chronologically, but everyone on the entire earth is going to hear the gospel. Like it says it right here, another angel flying overhead with the eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on the earth, every nation, tribe, and tongue and people. It says in a loud voice, fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come. Worship the one who made the heavens and the earth and the sea and the springs of waters. No one's going to be without excuse. That everyone's going to have heard what they need to hear to choose the right. It's like, this looks like maybe like the last chance, literally the last chance that anybody's going to have to make a change, make a change in their life and in their fruit. So I don't know. That's kind of my perspective.
It is interesting that depending on where that falls in the timeline, either this is, when this, because it does say then, so, but that's that whole thing. It's you have to watch
yeah,
where it's connected to. But it is interesting because we have seen previous texts where other things have happened and it didn't phase. Fire and rocks and earthquakes, and it didn't phase them. They continued sinning and worshiping false idols and doing, committing murder and adultery and all these other things. It didn't phase them one bit. So even if an angel flew overhead proclaiming the gospels, it's almost like they're too far gone at this point anyways. They wouldn't recognize it anyways or change their ways.
Yeah, if we're looking at it from that perspective, I definitely agree that this is obvious. We talked about the 42 months in previous episodes. I would say this is probably closer to the beginning of that, because we know that when the first beast shows up and then the second beast, he's the one that inserts the mark and brings that onto the stage. And so we hear this next, the next little section here, because you can't have the second angel before the first angel. That doesn't make sense. So that is after the first angel. And then you have the third angel talking about the mark and all of the wrath and everything. So I kind of see this first little section here towards the beginning of that 42 months. And then towards the end, you have, everything is coming to a conclusion, and then you have all the wrath, and it's very clear what's happening to the people that chose the mark and all that's going to take part in that thing. And so this is probably obviously very close, if not kind of another precursor or kind of like an overview of the day of the Lord, where all those cups of wrath are happening all on the same day.
And this to me goes back to the perfect nature as God as a judge, right?
Mm.
You can't if you're driving down the road and you don't say they didn't put up a speed limit sign, you can go into court and fight that and say, I just turned onto this road and there wasn't a speed limit sign for miles. So
It
how was I
wasn't a
supposed
set
to
of
know?
instructions. Yeah.
Right, how was I supposed to know how fast to go? Now, if somebody puts that speed limit sign right in front of your face and then you still speed, this is, to me, this is God giving every opportunity for people to do the right thing, to hear his calling,
Absolutely.
to whatever, and they still, I mean, even to have an angel or whatever proclaim it across the world, and then
Yeah.
still that he has to pour out wrath and judgment on the earth, I mean, shows the depravity of what human nature gets into and how
Yeah.
far we are, that all of these crazy things are happening or have been happening. And then you got angels proclaiming the glory of God, and you still want to do your own thing, man. That's a pretty far gone civilization.
Yeah. 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 I was just having a conversation even today talking about, I think, did we discuss it on one of the shows, the amount of people that don't have an inner monologue?
I
Is
don't
that
know if,
something
I mean,
we've
we've talked
discussed
about it before
offline?
on the
Yeah.
show. Yeah.
But I was even having this discussion today about that, and it's got to be that group of people, right? That just like at some point they just have no ability to reason, whether that was, I mean, it's getting back into the a whole other conversation, but like that's the thing out of Second Ezra that's talking about, like much clay was needed so that a little bit of gold could be formed. So I don't know if that's that category of just people that he still, even though maybe he knew that they weren't going to choose him, he still gave him the choice. He still had to be a just king that gave the instruction, gave every opportunity, and then obviously there's still going to be some people who just don't receive that. So
Yeah. Well, and going back just before we depart from the 144,000. So my biggest question has always been, when looking at the perceiving it the way that I do with the two witnesses and things like that, where do you think that this 144,000 could be? Well, no, because this couldn't be them, because they're already pulled from, because I've heard another good explanation about the 144,000, where when Yeshua was resurrected, there was witnesses that saw other people that they recognized, and this could be patriarchs or whatever, like that this is like the first fruits.
walking around Jerusalem.
Yeah, walking around
Yeah.
Jerusalem, and they didn't die again, right? The Bible says that it's appointed a man to die once. So if they resurrected with him, that could be the first fruits, and those are the 144,000 that went with him and have been with him, right? And then they're wiped clean, and there's no lie found in them. They didn't whore with the the whore of Babylon, because they were taken either before that, or they were separate, set apart from that, and specifically chosen by Yeshua when he resurrected to go with him. And it does say that they're because other texts say that they're bloodshed, they're everything, their robes are clean, they're spotless and blameless. So I think that 144,000, because I was going to ask, could this 144,000 be the same as the remnant?
That group of people.
But
Oh,
these
okay.
people are already redeemed at the same time that this remnant situation has happened. So unless chronologically this happens with the two witnesses, then they're killed and then they're resurrected, and then you have the 144,000, then it could be them. But if not, I think the possibility for a first fruits offering or first fruits rapture-esque thing happening at the time of Jesus's death, burial, and resurrection. Well, I guess resurrection.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I've not really put that one on top of that story. It is definitely interesting. I don't know that there's a ton more that, I don't know if we'd ever be able to actually validate that through scripture, like find a like a corroborating witness that would confirm that. But it's obviously, I mean,
the only thing that
like on the surface level, it fits, right?
Yeah, the only thing that's called
bit.
corroborated is the actual first fruits offering, like what they would do, using what the reference point is. You would let all your crops grow up, and then you would take a small corner portion of that, and that was offered up to God. And that was, then the rest was accumulated, and the corners were left for the poor and widowed and stuff. So just understanding that there's a section of that was just dedicated for Yeshua, or dedicated, for the altar or the burning and all that maybe you can justify that. But yeah, there's not anything that directly witnesses, a second witness to that, other than the relation to what they're tying it to. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you obviously have the 12,000 to each of the 12 tribes, right? So, that the judges that stood, that I think, I'm trying to think of off the top of my head where it talks about it, quite a few places, talking about the, the kingdom of God, that when it's here, everyone entering through the, all the gates and whatnot, and that we will still go out and teach Torah to the nations, during the millennial reign and whatnot. Those 12,000 may, for each one, maybe the judges that are sitting at the gate judging the matters of mortal humans that are still the leftovers and the remnant after the day of the Lord, those that survive, right, that pass the sheep, that are the sheep in the sheep and goats judgment in Matthew 25. So that's the only other thing that I think that could lend towards, that kind of theory of, hey, those were the ones that he appointed to be those that when the kingdom comes down, there's already the people in place, and then you have the people that take part in the first resurrection, that they don't, maybe not necessarily going straight into a new career of being a judge at the gates of the kingdom. But those people might already be in place, as the 144,000. So it's definitely interesting for sure.
Yeah. And then, so we go to the third angel, because the third angel is an interesting one too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't think I think we're pretty much on the same page about like the whole idea of hell. And I think we've talked about this. If you guys haven't seen, I have a video out there for the Decoding the Devil, which talks about hell fact of fiction, and kind of break down and talk about the ideas of where we get this like 7 layers of hell, this Dante's Inferno-esque kind of hell, that where people are thrown into there to be tormented for all of eternity. And we get some of that from this text right here, where it's specifically talking about those people who take the mark. There's something that happens to them, which, much like this, didn't unlock for me until the Nephilim ideology came out, and the Book of Enoch talking about they mated with women, and their children were half angel, half human hybrids, and because of that, they were not able to be resurrected. So they were like half eternal, half unresurrectable. And so when you take this mark, there's something that parallels that, where they're not able to be destroyed. I mean, the biblical text even says here that they searched for death and couldn't find it. So There's something that happens to those that take the mark, that even being thrown into the lake of fire, where the false prophet and eventually, Hasatan and the beast go, and it says that they're tormented for eternity. It doesn't say that everyone else who's ever been thrown in there or gets thrown in there at the day of judgment is tormented for all of eternity, but this specific groups of people. And a lot of people have taken that and then ran with that.
Layered that onto everything else.
Yeah, layered that like eternal damnation onto everyone. When I think later on, I think it's in 22, we read, not to jump forward, but it talks about the second death, that this is the final destruction, that all the things that were talked about dying is the first death, and then there's a second death, that God, it's kind of one of those things. I believe that God is a just and fair God, and if you spent your entire life, the opportunity he gave you to get to know him, to spend your entire life without him, if you die, you go into Sheol, and there's weeping and gnashing of teeth because you're in the absence of God, realizing you were wrong for your entire life. And then you go to judgment, which may seem like an eternity, may seem like a couple of hours. We don't know how the time works there. But then you stand before the glory of God at the great throne of judgment, and he says, "Turn away from me, you evildoer, I don't know you," and throws you into the lake of fire, and you cease to exist. He gives you what you wanted to begin with. So all the atheists and agnostics that think that they're just going to be died and buried into the ground, that's kind of going to be their punishment. They're going to have to stand before the glory of God and then realize that he's real, and then be snuffed out of existence, like being thrown or flicked into the sun. You know what I mean? There's no escaping that. There's no soul or energy or anything that's going to go anywhere. You're going to just dissipate. And I think that the text puts it down as being blotted out. That term in like the Hebrew and the Greek is like you never existed,
just erased from existence. Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. So there is that.
And then so just to clarify
Sure.
on that, then that, so there's gonna, you kind of see it, that there's going to be a group of people that don't choose the Father and his mercy, choose the Son, choose to worship the one the one way, the truth, and the life, right? So they don't choose that, but they also don't take the mark, and those are the people that will end up being eliminated from existence. But then everyone who does choose the mark will be eternal. Is that kind of what you were?
I mean, yeah, that's what it seems to say there, is that there isn't this eternal. They're torn, like it says right here in 9, right, or 10. It says, he will drink from the wine of God's anger, poured undiluted under the cup of his wrath, and he will be tormented in fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels of the Lamb, and the smoke of their torment will rise forever and ever. Now, this term forever and ever is like eon and eon. It can be used like for a short, like a temporal period of time, or it can literally mean like for a time and a time. It's weird how they do it. So it doesn't really mean eternity like we try to say it does, but it could be. We don't really know how that's going to work.
It's interesting because just in the definition there, it has like a specific like attribution to a messianic period. So like if we're talking about like the millennial reign, right? So if they're thrown into torment for that 1,000 years, right, and then at the end of that, then snuffed out, from existence or whatever, I could see that. And I've also heard
it does say, the death and Hades are thrown into the lake of fire, and that's the end of that.
Right.
But if this is like a separate entity from death and hell in parentheses, right, and it's in a basin right to the right side of God's throne, right, then these eternal angelic creatures / hybrid beings that were never meant to be created in the first place, I don't know. I don't know that God would. I mean, eternity is a long time, but I think it may be for a time period, but it could be eternal as well. I think that's a little bit much.
Well, it's interesting though, because going back to the pattern that we've been given in Torah, right? And they had the flame that was in the temple that was never allowed to go out, right? So like an eternal flame that was constantly burning. It was the priest's job, not necessarily the high priest, but the I guess like the entry level priests, their job to do all those duties, in the temple and keep that flame burning and whatnot. That would be obviously following a pattern of something that's in the temple in the kingdom, because there's going to be something on fire forever, going forward. So it would make sense that there is a place, that is constantly burning. And if that's where what we would consider, like, because it says it's going to be in the presence of the holy angels and of the Lamb, so he's going to be there forever. He's not going anywhere. That may lend credence to the fact that is something that's going to stay burning for, I guess what we would consider like eternity, for the people who chose that. I mean, because we just read that they're not unaware of what they're choosing. They know exactly what the truth is, and they just decide to go against it. So, I don't know.
And again, that could be that this is a loaded, situation too, because depending on what the mark actually ends up becoming, somebody could take the mark and let's say it's a death of the soul and then an embodiment of a demonic being, that what he's seeing being thrown in there, what their torment is actually that fallen spirit. Gotcha. And that person is separate from that, but he's seeing that as that representation of that person. That very well could be the case.
I think all of a sudden, like, light bulbs went off when you said that, because that makes sense because of what we've already talked about, that it's most likely not going to be the original inhabitant of that body, that physical body that's operating it at the end. If the mark, after they've chosen the mark, does unlock something that both changes their genetics and allows, a remote operator, or something just to literally physically take over that sack of flesh. So yeah, I think that's something about that clicks in my head, but I guess it's something we can study out a little further.
Yeah, for sure. The last thing I really like here is the blessed are the dead, those who die in the Lord from this moment on. That's from the moment of John, on. He's talking about those Christians that will follow. And I love the last part. It says, yes, says the Spirit, they will rest from their labors and their deeds will follow them. I love the rest thing on there, because that thing, it says, What was it? It's, endure to the end. You know,
Yeah.
those who find you know you'll find salvation if you endure to the end. You know that kind of phraseology. That word that's used in there for salvation is the word rest. So
Hmm.
this again, this echoes that idea. So I just really like that ending part of that.
Pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. We're only halfway through the first chapter. Lots of good stuff in there, man. Well, let's keep reading. This is verse 14 of chapter 14. It says, and I looked and saw a white cloud, and seated on the cloud was one like the Son of Man, with a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And then another angel came out of the temple, crying in a loud voice to the one seated on the cloud, swing your sickle and reap, because the time has come to harvest, for the crop of the earth is ripe. So the one seated on the cloud swung his sickle over the earth, and the earth was harvested. Then another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Still another angel with authority over the fire came from the altar and called out in a loud voice to the angel and the sharp sickle, saying, swing your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of grapes from the vine of the earth, because its grapes are ripe. So the angel swung his sickle over the earth and gathered the grapes of the earth, and he threw them into a great winepress of God's wrath. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and the blood flowed from it, rose as high as the bridles of the horses for a distance of 1,600 stadia. So I just want to back up here. Something just smacked me in the face. Remember when we were talking about the apocalypse of Abraham and the angel that we were introduced in that book? Do you
Yeah.
remember one of the attributes that he had authority over, specifically referencing like burning Abraham's father's house?
Yeah, yeah. It was like
Remember?
he was casting down stones and things like that, right? Like,
Was that he had authority over the fire because he was the one that burned up Abraham's father's house. This literally says another angel with authority over fire. So like that's I just thought that was kind of a cool
and that
thing.
was
Maybe
Jael,
that's
right? Yeah.
yeah, literally maybe Jael is himself being this other angel. Because I think it talks about one like the Son of Man, so we can, I guess, kind of assume that's Yeshua. And then another angel talked to him, and then another angel came out and told a different angel to to reap the grapes and whatnot. So I just think it's interesting that there's several different characters in here. One of them seemingly with attributes that points to Jael as the one with authority over fire. Just kind of just hit me
Yeah.
while I was reading through that.
Well,
But
and I think, and I don't know, maybe for this last part, I mean, I guess I wonder if it's like more like hyperbole or like, definitely. I don't think there'll be like a basin of blood, up to the height of a bridle of a horse and then 16 stadia. Like I think it's literally kind of showing, when God comes back with that sword out of his mouth and he pursues the enemies of Israel and his people, like just the bloodshed that will happen, would probably fill up, if you were getting that in a vision, you could kind of get this idea. Like, I've had visions where you kind of have to make sense of the iconography, And to me, I don't know that there's actually going to be like a basin like that with horses with blood up to their bridle, but I mean, it's an interesting visual. Do you think that's actually going to be a literal thing, or do you think that's more of a visual description?
yeah, I mean, when I read through that, I don't. This is just my perspective. I don't see what it adds except just painting a picture for how bad of a situation that's going to be for anybody who's taking whoever's going to be drinking that cup of wrath. You want nothing to do with it,
Sure.
because it's just painting an absolutely bloody picture, right? Just
That's
it's, for lack of a better term, and not to make light of it, but I mean it's man. If we should pray for those people, whoever those people are right now, like if they are alive today, if they're not alive today, if it's a different distant generation, I want to pray for those people right now to listen to that first angel, right? That's proclaiming the gospel, because it's not gonna be a good day for you. But you want to jump on to 15,
yep.
see
Yeah.
what's next. Excuse me. All right, so this is Revelation 15. It says, "Then I saw another great and marvelous sign in heaven: seven angels with the seven final plagues, with which the wrath of God is completed. And I saw something like a sea of glass mixed with fire, beside which stood those who had conquered the beast and its image and the number of its name, and they were holding harps from God, and they sang the song of God's servant Moses and of the Lamb." Great and wonderful are your works, O Lord God Almighty. Just and true are your ways, O King of the nations. Who will not fear you, O Lord, and glorify your name? For you alone are holy. All nations will come and worship before you, for your righteous acts have been revealed. I think it's literally what we were just reading of with this part right here, where it says, "Who will not fear you?" Like the whole earth just got preached to by this angel. Who would not choose to glorify your name, because you alone are holy. I don't know. That's pretty. They're it's almost like a passive aggressive song right there. Like, just like, man, who wouldn't choose him after seeing everything?
They have that same kind of echoing happen with the beast, right? Who will make war with him?
Yeah,
right. They're
exactly.
having that like, this is like the chanting and the taunting of the two sides. Like,
Yeah.
our beast is so great. Who would make war with him? God. And
Right.
Yeshua,
Right.
right.
Yeah.
This is saying, look how powerful our God is. And you
It's
guys
like the story
are...
of David and Goliath again, literally. They're all like, nobody can touch us. Yeah, yeah.
The one I do
That's
like
so
this
good.
part in 2 right there, where it says, and I saw something like, so now we're reflecting back on what John saw earlier. He sees this sapphire. Remember, it's again like Ezekiel sees it from the bottom up, and he's seeing the sapphire dome, the firmament, and then John is seeing it from top down. He sees this sapphire glass, like it's a sea of glass mixed with fire, because the earth is burning. In the global model, there's a whole lot going on underneath there, because before it was the sapphire glass and the 4 living beings, and now it's like a domed pit of fire where God's wrath has been poured out. This is what he's seeing. So
Right.
It's just interesting to see the different perspectives of as this is going along.
Yeah.
Let's see how long is the go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh no, you're good. I was just gonna say that the only other thing that I saw here was, it's literally whenever this is happening, like the people that were part of the first resurrection that didn't choose the mark, right? That didn't worship the beast or the number of its name. All that has taken place. Those people are already yanked out of there. Like, if you took part, if you were alive and you were caught up with the rest of as the resurrection is happening, and the 2 witnesses being resurrected and all that literally happens, those people are already up there. They have already escaped the wrath, and it's just about to be a bad day for whoever's left.
That's what I see here too. I see like John, because he's saying, then I saw another marvelous sign in heaven, and then he says, I see 7 angels with 7 plagues. And then but I see all the people who were suffering and who carried on, God's...
Endured to the end.
Right,
yeah.
Endured to the end. They're with us, because now it's about, the crap's about to hit the fan, Right. And so everybody who is written in the book of life is here with me now. And we're standing over, about to watch all the vials of wrath be poured out on the earth, or the bowls of wrath.
Yeah. Well, before we go on to the next section, you want to hit our break, and then
we're going to do our break, and
pick up right here.
We got a cool little thing here. A friend of the show, Ivan, he is a fellow YouTuber. He's also into anthropology, and I think he said he's working on his master's in like biblical spiritual warfare. This guy's awesome. He's been doing a lot of stuff, like trying to build on the backbone of what people like Rob Skiba have been doing, and I want to support his channel. So I had him put together a little thing. He's got a documentary that's coming out on December 5th, and he's got several other videos that he's already put together that are pretty amazing. So I just wanted to put together a little short, and then a way that you guys can check him out. So we'll do this as a 4-minute or 3-minute commercial break, and then we'll give his information out again, so you guys can check him out and go over and like, share, and show some love over there to our brother. As soon as we get through all this stuff, we'll get you on, Ivan, I promise. So
yeah, absolutely.
He's got a lot of cool things to talk about, and I want to get him on. So we'll jump over that commercial break, guys. We'll see you on the other side, and we'll see you in just a minute.
All right.
The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They have no speech. They use no words. No sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. In the heavens, God has pitched a tent for the sun. It is like a bridegroom coming out of his chamber, like a champion rejoicing to run his course. It rises at one end of the heavens and makes its circuit to the other. Nothing is deprived of its warmth. The law of the Lord is perfect, refreshing the soul. The statutes of the Lord are trustworthy, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, giving joy to the heart. The commands of the Lord are radiant, giving light to the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The decrees of the Lord are firm, and all of them are righteous. They are much more precious than gold, than much pure gold. They are sweeter than honey from the honeycomb. By them your servant is warned. In keeping them there is great reward. But who can discern their own errors? Forgive my hidden faults. Keep your servant also from willful sins. May they not rule over me. Then I will be blameless, innocent of great transgression. May these words of my mouth and this meditation of my heart be pleasing in your sight, Lord, my rock and my redeemer.
Welcome back to Trinity Project. My name is Ivan, and today we're going to talk about the topic biblical science or space science. This is the space science that was preached not just by the authors in the Bible, but also by every single ancient culture worldwide until the 15th century AD. In this presentation, we're going to analyze what the Bible says about the creation of heaven and earth. Also, we're going to compare biblical science with mainstream science, and I'm going to let you decide what you're going to believe.
All right, and we're back. I want to thank Ivan for sending that over so we can get it in here. If you guys want to check out Ivan, you guys can pull that back. You can use your phone to QR scan. That'll take you directly to his channel. Or you can type in IVANCVETKOSKI into YouTube, and it should pull up his channel. Go over and show him some love. Drop him a like and subscribe, and watch some of his content. He's got some really good stuff, and we hope to see a lot more from him. So we thank you, Ivan. I see him in the chat. And if again, I'm going to shout this out to anybody. If you guys have anything else you want to promote, any kind of, say you make zeets, or you build welcome signs, shalom signs, or whatever you want to do, and you want to promote it on the page, we're always, or on our show, we're always happy to do that for, our brothers and sisters. So just reach out to me through email at nchronicles@gmail.com, or hit me up on the Facebook page or through Messenger or whatever. So now that that's out of the way, all right. Do you want to jump back? You want to open that back up here?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Look okay?
Yep, we're back.
All right. I'll jump straight back into it. It's verse 5 in chapter 15. It says, "After this, I looked in the temple. The tabernacle of the testimony was opened in heaven. And out of the temple came the 7 angels with the 7 plagues, dressed in clean and bright linen, and girded with golden sashes around their chests. Then one of the 4 living creatures gave the 7 angels 7 golden bowls full of the wrath of God, who lives forever and ever. And the temple was filled with the smoke from the glory of God, and from his power. And no one could enter the temple until the 7 plagues of the 7 angels were completed. He kind of goes straight into chapter 16. It says, "Then I heard a loud voice from the temple saying to the 7 angels, 'Go, pour out on earth the 7 bowls of God's wrath.' So the first angel went and poured out his bowl on the earth, and loathsome, malignant sores broke out on those who had the mark of the beast and worshipped its image. And the second angel poured out his bowl into the sea, and it turned to blood like that of the dead. Every living thing in the sea died. And the third angel poured out his bowl into the rivers and the springs of water, and they turned to blood. And I heard the angel of the waters say, 'Righteous are you, O Holy One, who is and was, because you have brought these judgments. For they have spilled the blood of saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink, as they deserve.' And I heard the altar reply, 'Yes, Lord God Almighty, true and just are your judgments.' Then the fourth angel poured out his bowl on the sun, and it was given power to scorch the people with fire. And the people were scorched by intense heat, and they cursed the name of God who had given authority over these plagues. Yet they did not repent and give him glory. And the fifth angel poured out his bowl on the throne of the beast, and its kingdom was plunged into darkness, and men began to gnaw their tongues in anguish, and curse the God of heaven for their pains and their sores. Yet they did not repent of their deeds. And the sixth angel poured out his bowl on the great river Euphrates, and its water was dried up to prepare the way for the kings of the east. And I saw 3 unclean spirits that looked like frogs coming out of the mouths of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And these are demonic spirits that perform signs and go out to all the kings of the earth to assemble them for battle on the great day of God the Almighty. Behold, I am coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who remains awake and clothed, so that he will not go naked and let his shame be exposed." And they assembled the kings in the place in Hebrew that is called Armageddon.
Yeah, that's some interesting stuff there.
It's it's not a good day.
No, but I do see that a lot of the punishments are very fitting for the type of people who are still on the earth at that time, like the shedding it, like the turning the water to blood. When you think about like a lot of the elites, and then a lot of the stuff that happens with the blood drinking, the child sacrifice, all of that kind of stuff, it's almost fitting that, you know, now you don't even have water to drink from. You're going to gorge yourself on the blood of the saints, kind of thing, right? So, and then I think that was the second angel, right? The second angel.
The third one, yeah.
Oh, the third one, yeah. And then, you know, as it goes down, then it says that that they will gnaw on their tongues, the ones that curse God. Like, you know, it's like out of your mouth you curse God, and then you're going to chew on your own tongue. Like, I mean, it's pretty interesting. Like, it just, to me, you see the judgments and where God is at on this, that his judgments are fair and just for the actions of the people. He's not doing this, you know, willy-nilly. There
Right.
are people who are going to deserve this punishment that is coming. I mean, this is, you know, when we're reading this on paper and we look at the world we're in today, we're like, well, I could see it, but it's going to get way worse, because these people are going to deserve this wrath of God. I mean, it gets to the point, like, because God, I mean, can look at the world today, as bad as it is, as bad as there are things, there are still good, and there's still good things that are happening in this world. But it says that those that take this mark, they seek, they seek evil continually. You know, it's like this whole idea of like these evil spirits that we see in Enoch, where they're just lusting after the desires of their hearts and they don't care about anything else, you know, and this is why these people get this judgment. It's not that they're just bad people. These are the worst people. And it's so over, you know, the crying of the saints that we see earlier on in the text. We're saying, God, when are you going to avenge us? When are you going to avenge us? It has to epitomize like almost a Sodom and Gomorrah times 1,000 moment, where it's just so awful that God just can't handle it anymore. It's time to pull his people out and time to destroy the earth and start over.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting because, like, you went back to that other text that it said that the saints that were under the altar were crying out, "When are you going to adjust us? You know, one, oh, holy and true." And then this part right here, right after the angels agree with what you said, that it was deserved, because it says, "For they have spilled the blood of the saints and prophets, and you have given them blood to drink, as they deserve." So, I mean, the angels, they're not lying. They agree with 100% of what you just said. And then you hear that same group of people that are under the altar, assumedly, that they're the ones that saying, true and just are your judgments.
Right.
It's not us to decide what's just for them. You're literally giving them exactly what is the appropriate punishment. I mean, man, have you ever bit your tongue?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Like, if you don't think that's just like, as you know, a fraction of 1% of how bad it would be like to chew your own tongue off. I mean, I just can't, you can't even imagine that. I mean, I just, it gives me like, just thinking about it. You know, but that's just one part that these people are going to have to deal with because they were cursing the name of God.
Right.
Man, that's some place I don't want to find myself. But yeah, it was, I think it's interesting. The fourth angel that poured his bowl on the sun. I wonder if that could be some type of, you know, how much predictive programming that's been given to us about like solar flares and whatnot. Yeah. That's literally going to be how they spin that, you know, because this whole time there's going to be still this the spin zone is still going to be in full effect. I think like, yeah, it's global warming. Like it's, you know, and now we just know that it's God. Be angry at God that he's the one doing all this stuff. And then they say it's a solar flare when the sun gets all wonky and starts scorching people. So it's definitely not going to be it's not going to be good. And I think when in verse 10 was talking about the darkness, from my perspective of everything that we've seen, you know, and we see like all these qualifiers and these individual things that all line up, you know, about the day of the Lord. And it says it's a day of darkness. I don't think it's going to be like, I don't know. Did you see the path of totality for the solar eclipse that was in 2017? Did you see like what, it was the most eerie thing, you know, because I drove down to Southern Illinois to see it, to kind of be in that path of where it's completely like right in the middle of it. So it lasted the longest. I wanted to witness that, but it was the most eerie thing, just like the light being sucked out of everything around it. But I could still see. I could walk around. I could see everything. It was just diminished. I don't think this is what that's talking about. I think light's going to disappear.
Yeah.
You know, and this.
Well, I think it's almost snuffing out of the sun at that point, because when the new kingdom does come back, though, there's no need for the sun.
We don't need the sun anymore.
So I mean, can you imagine this whole thing right here? I remember about 15 years ago when my dad was still alive. I went to my dad because I was pouring through reading Revelations, and I was like, "Dad, I found zombies in the Bible," and he's like, "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Those that take the mark of the beast." And he's like, what? And I gave him this kind of, pitched him this thing about that whatever it does, it causes this kind of possession thing that happens. It's like this dark awakening thing that we see that Russ Dizdar talked about for a long time. And you see that, like this right here tells them that they have pains, they're gnawing on their tongue, they have open sores, they search for death and they can't find it. And, you know, they're trying to drink water, blood, so they're probably covered in blood, you know, and if they're possessed by a Nephilim spirit that is perpetually seeking, you know, and these are Nephilim, these were cannibalistic giants, right? Then they're maybe even eating each other, eating other people. I mean, like this literally, talk about predictive programming. Look at how much the zombie thing has been pushed over the last 10 or 15 years. And like, this is what these people like for them, it's going to look good for a certain point. And then all of a sudden, like things start changing. They search for death and they can't find it. They get covered in lesions and sores. Their water's turned to blood. They don't have food. You know, everything's dying. Everything's on fire. Then the sun goes out. It's like a zombie apocalypse, dude. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So,
and then you have these three unclean spirits that it says it goes out and grabs them pretty much and tells them to all meet up at the one place. Like they've completely lost control of their own body. Like they're not choosing anymore. They've lost their free will, their choice, you know, and so they're on autopilots and getting drawn to this place. And they're about, you know, it's like, the father's having the enemy do all his dirty work, get them all in one place, so he doesn't have to go looking for them. Like, they're all just going to be there waiting for him in one big gathered zombie horde, right?
Yeah, the three frogs thing is definitely a weird like situation, because this is one of those things I've tried to look into and like figure out what these things are specifically. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's just not enough information on them. Like, you know, there's a lot of association with the Kek, you know, the old There's a frog god thing that this may be like an association back to Egypt where there was the plague of the frogs, all of that kind of stuff. But why there's three and what they represent, why they come out of the dragon's mouth, like there's so much to this, and we just don't have the answers of what. Do you have anything that pings for you that what these things are and what they're actually going to be doing? Are they going to be people, or is it going to be a demonic entity walking around?
I mean, it says what they are right here. It says it's unclean spirits. So, whether it's three of the original Watcher angels, like whether it's three like of the many unclean spirits of the Nephilim, like I don't know, but I know where unclean spirits come from, and that's what it says, that they were at some point one of the Nephilim, whether it was one that part of the 1/10 that got left here on Earth, whether it was part of the 9/10 that got put in Sheol or Tartarus or whatever. I don't know, but it says it's an unclean spirit, and their appearance
they perform signs like we saw back with like the whole false prophet idea,
right,
where he's performing signs and wonders. So these are like underlings maybe to this false prophet.
Yeah, I mean, I would say so. It says they come. I mean, because throughout this whole story, you have the dragon who gave his authority to the beast, and the second beast is operating the authority of the first beast, right? And so they're all echad, right? One in thought, will, and action. And so you see that mirrored here, that it's the same unclean spirit is coming out of those three that are all operating the same function. Their goal is the same. And so whether it's three individual ones, or whether it's the same one that's coming, the same message that's coming from all three of those three individual people, to go out and gather, those things. But it probably,
when you read this, like it's almost kind of like we were talking about with this whole body embodiment. Like there's a human body, but then there's a spirit indwellment of this, because if you read it, it says, and I saw three unclean spirits that look like frogs. Okay, spiritually maybe they look like frogs, coming out of the mouths of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. So it's like spirits coming out of these three characters. These are demonic spirits that perform signs and go out to all the kings. So it's almost like he's seeing the spirit indwellment of these things, as characters or golems, but there's a spirit that's controlling them, kind of thing.
Well, because the image of the beast, I don't know if that plays into it, because of my understanding of what that is as an automaton,
right. But I think that's the indwellment of the, because they all point back to the worship of the beast, right? Or
I agree. And so what I was going to say was that since the image of the beast was given power to kill anybody who didn't take the mark, right? In some way, I think it's spiritually through these unclean spirits that it's interacting with those what we're calling those zombies, that it's actually giving them like the marching orders, right? It's that same whether it's spiritual that's interacting with AI type function, as it's actually physically portrayed, but however that is, that's the actual the code that's being given out to give them their instructions, as opposed to I guess that's, you think about John, what he was seeing, and how he was trying to explain that. We've talked about it before, that there's probably some stuff that he's like, I don't even know what the heck I'm looking at. I'm doing my best to paint a picture for you. And so however he was being shown, that may have lent to, this kind of description that we're giving here, is that there's the voice, the will of those three are all going out, to everyone else to gather them there. So, I mean, we could probably play around and talk about all the things that it could be. I don't necessarily know that I have a direct answer on it, but that we can kind of just rest on the things that it very, very clearly and literally says, that they are unclean spirits. It's coming out of the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet into story, going to everybody else, bringing them all to the same place. So,
yep. And they assemble them all in a place called Armageddon, or Megiddo. The Valley of Megiddo is what that actually would translate in the Hebrew, right? It's...
Have you ever listened to Steve Mutria's kind of take on Armageddon. That like I think in the so in here it's shown as Armageddon, but like I think that he's seen some, I think, transcripts or whatnot that that literally it's translated as Har Moed, so like the mountain of appointment, as opposed to the Mount of Megiddo, which obviously is a real place and whatnot. But he kind of comes at it from the perspective. He's like, I'm not saying this is exactly what it is, but I'm just kind of pointing out some different options of what it could be as far as the actual literal place.
So what is the mountain? You said it was the mountain of
appointment. So I guess
in
my understanding, we would go back to Mount Sinai. Like all this stuff that's happened at Sinai over the course of everything. Maybe that there's a chance that that's what it is, as opposed to that place that's, like the Valley of Megiddo and whatnot.
Sure.
Because you think about what's around Sinai, just complete barren nothingness where you could easily gather all that stuff, as opposed to the Valley of Megiddo, which is a fairly small literal location. A lot harder to get a bunch of stuff in there. But that's just my perspective.
I mean, depends on where we're at in the timeline.
Right, like
because there are mountains completely coming down, and
right, exactly. Everything's flat, and you can just be wherever. And
I wonder in relation to that, like where this is at would be where Mount Hermon is,
right?
Because there's, it's some of the lore of like Nimrod falling back to the earth and falling his back onto Mount Hermon, and it's also the place where the fallen angels were. Sure. I'm wondering how in relation, because it seems like all of those mountain ranges all have something to do, with what's going on. It's interesting to go and look at the topography of around Jerusalem, because they do talk about a lot of these things, and the kings of the north, and the Euphrates River, and all of these things being like barriers to stop these things. That's why it dries up, and then they can cross over, which is that the kings of the north, I think, is what they describe as Gog and Magog, right?
I want to say so, yeah.
That's a whole. Did you get to watch that video? Because that was super interesting. Yeah,
definitely interesting. So I guess kind of what I took away from that, without like going too far deep in depth with it. So were you kind of thinking that it was like an invisible wall for spiritual stuff, so they couldn't cross it like spiritually until? Is that kind of what
I think there was something like that was implied, that they were like, it was a barrier until a certain time, kind of thing.
Well, it's so interesting because when you study the occult and whatnot, how much they have how much that's a real thing. I've never been an occult practitioner or anything, but even in all the movies and stuff, you see all that stuff of like salt lines and stuff like that. Right. That is some type of invisible barrier that certain things can't cross, and so obviously we know that the spiritual realm is very real. So that's very interesting because of how it ties into who the beast and the second beast are, right, and how that part ties into it.
It's interesting because when we're talking about these giants or the Nephilim that God allowed in the land, I can't remember where that was exactly at. I think it was in Judges or something like that, where he says, I will allow these giants around you so that those that did not know war will know war as they're going into the promised land. It wasn't Judges. I think it was, I can't remember exactly where that was at. So if you guys know, Joshua. Put it up in the chat. Yeah, it was Josh. I think it was in Joshua. Yeah. But there's that idea that even in the promised land, there were these giants and these clans, these Nephilim, principalities and whatever around there. But there's also those promises about wherever your feet go, that will mark out the territory, like of where I'm going to give you this land. So maybe there was like some kind of barrier walking. That 40 years in the desert was them walking out and taking back that land spiritually and marking a territory where they couldn't invade back in until a certain time, kind of thing. So
that's so interesting because of what I was doing right before we got on the show tonight, kind of doing something very similar to that. Kind of spiritual warfare is real, right? And if you've been watching this show for any amount of time, you probably have a pretty decent understanding of that, not just from our testimonies and what you've seen kind of in this community and whatnot, but reading this word, if you don't know spiritual warfare is a very real thing, and you don't have battle lines drawn and territories that are designated for you and that are protected by the Most High, man, I would get on that. I literally was doing that before we got on tonight. And it's so funny that gets brought up tonight because
walk your house, walk your neighborhood, pray over it. That's
absolutely.
you're entrusted with that area. Take it back.
Yeah, for sure. Sorry for the rabbit trail, but it's important. It's pretty cool. All right, so this is what the final bowl here in verse 17. It says, then the seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air, and a loud voice came from the throne in the temple saying, it is done. And there were flashes of lightning and rumblings and peals of thunder and a great earthquake, like the likes of which had not occurred since men were upon the earth. So mighty was the great quake. The great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. And God remembered Babylon the Great and gave her the cup of the wine of the fury of his wrath. Then every island fled, and no mountain could be found. And the great hailstones weighing almost 100 pounds each rained down on them from above. And the men cursed God for the plague of hail because it was so horrendous.
Can you imagine getting hit with 100-pound hailstones and still shaking your fist at God? Like, I can't get it. How do people get so far gone, man? It's just insane.
I think at this point, I don't know. It's just cemented. Like I think they know at this point that there is no turning back, and it's just a rebellion all the way to the end. It's the pride of the adversary that is just in full display of what it takes to be in rebellion to the Most High, like blatant, outright rebellion. And I mean, I'm working on my 1-year-old right now with just. You can see that fleshly desire even at 1 year old of just, I want to do opposite of what I'm being told to. And man, if that's not taken care of early, it doesn't go away.
Well, I definitely think that this lends credence to the idea, though, that they may be overwhelmed or, if not possessed fully by a demonic principality that only cares about the destruction of the flesh, the fulfillment of its desires or whatever, and doesn't care about anything else. I mean, just the fact that like all of this stuff is happening and they're still cursing God. I mean, it almost goes beyond human alone. Like what's happening here is like a whole cursing of what's left. And two, to touch on, this is the epitome. This is the finishing move, the final blow. So when the angel flies over and says, Babylon has fallen, this is a marker that's showing it's going, like, so you can overlap every time it's saying and talking about Babylon falling. It's this point right now. This is the 7th bowl, right? This is the completion of it, that this is finished. Jerusalem cracks into 3 parts. All the rest of the cities are destroyed. It's like, that's hit that part again. It says the cities of the nations. It's right. Not, it doesn't matter what city you're in. It's coming down. Right. Yeah, I think, but it says the great city, right?
It says the great city was split into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed.
Right.
So the entire city is coming down. Like, I don't care where you're at. I don't think I would take refuge in a building for this one, because it's like you said, the epitome of everything being debased and completely brought low,
and destroyed,
there's nothing that's gonna
it's like clearing the threshing floor. Like, it's removing everything out of the way, because I feel like this is that point where he's got to burn off everything else, because he's starting it over, and he's going to bring the New Jerusalem down. He's going to reign for here, and he's got to clear that basin out, so it's that full final wiping out and destroying of everything and pummeling it out.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's see what Revelation 17 tells us, because I think that some of what we just read, we're going to kind of zoom back into exactly who and some more descriptions of all of what we've already talked about, who it was and why. I don't know. We'll let the word speak for itself. How about that?
Sure.
It says, then one of the 7 angels with the 7 bowls came and said to me, come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits on many waters. The kings of the earth were immoral with her, and those who dwell on the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her immorality. And the angel carried me away in the spirit into a wilderness, where I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. And she held in her hand a golden cup full of the abominations and the impurities of her sexual immorality. And on her forehead a mysterious name was written, Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and the abominations of the earth. I could see that the woman was drunk with the blood of the saints and witnesses for Jesus. And I was utterly amazed at the sight of her. Why are you so amazed? Said the angel. I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw, and it was, and now is no more, but is about to come up out of the abyss and go to its destruction. And those who dwell on the earth, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will marvel when they see the beast that was and is not and yet will be. This calls for a mind with wisdom. The 7 heads are the 7 mountains on which woman sits, and there are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. But when he does come, he must remain only for a little while. The beast that was and now is not is an 8th king who belongs to the other 7 and is going into destruction. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but will receive 1 hour of authority as kings along with the beast. These kings have one purpose, to yield their power and authority to the beast. Let's save the rest of it for after we talk about this other part, because I want to kind of end on that last part. I think that's gonna be exciting. But what do you see when we talk about when we're talking about the woman that's on this riding the beast?
Man, there have been so many different descriptions of what and who that could be, from Roman Catholic Church to Jerusalem itself to a religious institution that has been around riding the coattails of the beast throughout time, which that's kind of where I lead the credence to. And we had a really good discussion. We were talking about Nimrod and Semiramis and Nergal. Earlier, we were talking about kind of like the structure of Nimrod being the king with Nergal being his high priest. And then, Tammuz would have been that third party, if anything, in that situation. But Semiramis was not really like valued like we think she is. Like the Roman Catholic Church, they instituted Isis worship as Mary, and they kind of made this triune nature of Father and Mary and the Son. But Semiramis was actually just riding the coattails of her. Actually, it was her son, who she had an incestuous relationship with. After his death, she started the religion of Nimrod, which was spread out amongst the world. And I was just thinking about this as we were talking earlier, about this idea that if you're an outlier to the whole Babylonian thing and you were just seeing what was happening, you saw Nimrod die, you see this woman who, we use these terms like Babylon working with Aleister Crowley, which is a sexual rite. So I think that Tammuz, it was not an immaculate conception as, what they describe. She was probably doing the Babylonian sex magic, and she got pregnant either by, Nimrod's right-hand man, his priest, or by, could have been anybody at that point. But if you're an outside, somebody who was viewing the situation, she would be like the ruler who's like the high priestess of everything, and she's fornicating with whoever and anybody that she wants to. She would literally be the whore of Babylon who rode the coattails of Nimrod. And I think the same kind of idea we see here with this dragon, this not dragon, but the beast with the multiple heads is like this almost reincarnated or re-brought back spirit of Nimrod 7 times throughout history. He says he was, is, has to come 5 times, and then the dragon is part of the 8th. I mean, it's like he pops up throughout history. Like he's been brought back, like this whole Gilgamesh, Osiris, and we even, what was her name? Probably Alexandria, who does this whole breakdown of this, where she talks about Saint Jerome, and that they believe that
Saint Germain,
yeah,
and,
he's this,
and like Francis Bacon and all that,
right?
Yeah.
That he's this reincarnated, which may be this reincarnated thing of this priest, that we were talking about, who was also was it? I can't remember. Enku.
Enkidu.
Yeah. Go ahead and say that again so everybody hear it.
Enkidu. It was that was in the Epic of Gilgamesh. That was Gilgamesh's like right hand man,
right,
which we would associate then with like Nimrod, Nergal, Osiris, Anubis, Apollo, Hermes. It's the same two people. Kind of like was that last week that we talked about that, or the week before?
I think it was
the last
2 weeks
show.
ago.
Yeah. So it's that same story, that same guy and his right hand man that we're doing all that stuff. So
I think this would be something that they would have understood the language, like, and what it's applying to. And if she was like the creator of this like Mesopotamian early, religion of, this deity worship of humans kind of thing, or of Nephilim or whatever that Nimrod was, that all of these religions spawned from, then this is, I believe, like this religious institution that's riding on the backbone or riding on the coattails of Nimrod's rule throughout history. And again, this echoes what I see in the, I think it's Ezekiel text where it talks about Lucifer, which the Hillel ben Shakar, like it's talking about these multiple times through the king of Tyre and different things that he has seen these heads pop up to his point. And so I just think this carries on from this, and he's seeing the kind of epitomization of the entire scaling of the earth and what's been happening with this harlot riding on the back of Nimrod's, rule, powered by Satan, with his little buddy as his false prophet.
Yeah, it's interesting because we're talking about Semiramis, Isis, Ishtar, like that, the same person. Where do you think that lines up with like this person that we're talked about in chapter 2, Jezebel?
The Jezebel spirit. I think because I think it's is it the Book of Enoch or Jubilees where it says that the women who laid down with the Nephilim became sirens. So there was something about that also changed them and turned them into some sort of demonic hybrid. I mean, when you look at sirens throughout history, that's where we get the idea of fairies and mermaids and stuff like that. These lusty, what does it describe Jezebel here as? A prophetess who is about sexual immorality. So that's what the whole mermaid thing was, is these, women
seducing
seduced you to your doom. So I think it's that same kind of idea that these women who did sleep with these fallen angels became these sirens, and then these women who were caught with these Nephilim or whatever became these demonic-esque creatures as well. There's something set apart, something different from what, say the male characteristics are. But, we have succubus, incubus, we have all this history of these seducing spirits all throughout, human history. They have to stem from something like this. And I think that she is kind of the epitome of that, with being this Jezebel spirit, because we know that we call it Jezebel, but Jezebel is only a representation of what this spirit was. We know that the actual Jezebel character wasn't a spirit or didn't turn into an evil spirit. We don't have any evidence that says she, became a Nephilim or anything like that. So it has to predate her.
Right. No, I agree. And I think just some of the characteristics that we have seen from the person we know as Jezebel was that there was always that spirit of control and manipulation that was happening. And we've always heard it said, it's kind of like a bumper sticker phrase, but anywhere there's a Jezebel, there's an Ahab, right? And so there was someone that was willing and that was being manipulated, seduced by whatever the case may be, by this spirit that's not just operating in women, because like you said, incubus and succubus was kind of like depending on your on who you were, how that was kind of portrayed to you, right? And so, I mean, we talked about Semiramis being the one that kind of was seduced everyone into following her, that was riding the coattails of what Nimrod and what he was doing, and how she kind of was his like marketing department, and the face of all of that going forward after he was gone. And you see that represented back into then Isis again in Egypt, Ishtar, or Ishtar, Semiramis, the Akkadian, or is that Babylonian? And then I always get those two confused. Which names kind of came from which?
Right. Well, I think after she got a hold of it, then she starts the deification of her is after she got a hold of the religion. It's where you start seeing Isis worship. You start getting even the stories in the story of Gilgamesh, where Isis is the one that kills or Astarte, or I can't remember who it is that kills Gilgamesh's his friend. That's attributed to that female god, and that's why he goes and seeks out trying to find the way to make him or to become immortal. So I think it's interesting, like where the lore and everything changes. I think it changes when she gets power, and then she starts, I have the unborn child of Nimrod, and then the kid dies, and then that's pretty much where you hear the end of it for her. There's not much after that, like in the story. So.
Well, I think that like even this next little part here, it says, talking still about Jezebel and that spirit, but behold, I will cast her into a bed of sickness, and those who commit adultery with her will suffer great tribulation unless they repent of her deeds, right? Then I will strike her children dead, and all the churches will know that I am the one who searches minds and hearts, and I will repay each of you according to your deeds. So this is literally what we were just reading in the previous chapter of this just judgment of exactly what you deserve because of this woman, the mother of prostitutes, that had seduced people into committing sexual immorality with her. It's literally like identical descriptions of that same spirit that's been operating, throughout all this time, right alongside with the same the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, right? Yeah. So,
well, what's interesting with the whole Ahab thing, what I have noticed with that there's not really like an Ahab spirit, but it's attached to someone who was supposed to be a prophet of God, and then he failed or faltered, and so you have to think that like Ahab was supposed to had a purpose, but he didn't do what he was supposed to be doing. So then a Jezebel is assigned to him to take him down, to be his downfall. And we see this with, they hate prophets, and they seem to attach themselves with someone who maybe have had the gifting of prophecy, but didn't fulfill or didn't follow through with it. So there's some sort of gifting that goes to that person, and they're open and exposed, so a Jezebel spirit comes in. That's been my experience. So I dealt with the Jezebel spirit through relationships, and I kept going, why are all the girls the same that I'm dating? And then I realized they're not. They were not like that until a certain point, and then they all became the same. Right. And it was because it was following me around, and that was something I had to deal with. So I have a good understanding about like this crazy spirit that and they're not all one Jezebel spirit that deals with everybody, but they function as like, Jezebel spirit would be a head of a legion of demons that go out and are under their charge. But
sure.
The Ahab, if you think about that, the Ahab wasn't Nimrod, but if Nimrod was sleeping with his mother, then her first husband, which would be his grandfather, would have been the Ahab. So who was his grandfather?
Right. Cush.
Yeah. So what's happening there?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And he was, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, he was like the first king, like anybody who had any amount of, after Noah, he was the first one who had any amount of, he had the people's ear. He was the first one that people, we're sheep. We like being led. He was the first leader of the people as they were repopulating the earth. He was the one that people were drawn to, maybe a charismatic type of leader, right? And so obviously had that same potential to be someone who brought people closer to the Father. But we see how that.
But you see how happens. Whatever happens to him, we don't know if we have any information. I haven't really looked into it where he's dead or whatever by this time. I'm assuming so, because she's now pursuing Nimrod, who is now the ruler or stepping up to be the great ruler of the earth. And so she leaves from him and goes after her son. So
because in that chapter, in chapter 2 where we just read, it says, I will destroy your children. Right. So like it falls right back in line with her children being the beast. Right. And it's just layered on top of each other over and over again. And so you see it's pretty cool because we know that the dragon had 7 heads and 10 horns. Right. And it says those kings had one purpose, to yield their power and authority to the beast. I see that easily as being not necessarily like presidents or like leaders of state, but maybe even like powerful leaders of corporations or whatever.
Sure.
Exactly.
Could be religious leaders, or could be a combination of all the above.
Combination of both. Yeah, for sure. That they have something that is instrumental into what the dragon's plan is. They give all that over to him.
Revelation 17:17 echoes that as well.
Yeah.
Where it says that God is the one that that this is why this whole thing, like, to me, it's like everybody is, oh, the mark of the beast and all this and like that, and they put a lot of fear into what's happening, but then realizing Revelation 17:17, which we're going to read here in just a second, is that God is the one who turned the hearts of these people to give their power over to the beast. Right. So it's like he's in control of all of this, like that all of this has to happen. He saw this from the beginning. And that's one of the things that, like, I don't know if you saw when it talks about the foundations, and those who dwell on the earth whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world will marvel when they see the beast. It's like there's nothing in them that is going to guide them to God. They're only marveled at the power of the beast. Right. So that goes back to that whole clay thing that we talk about with the, or the 30% of people who are, NPCs or whatever. It's like, right, there's just something that they're created for this time to be, a part of this. That God has formed and fashioned all of this to happen the way it's supposed to, because he saw it from the beginning, and he, had John write it down. So,
well, it's interesting though, because it goes back to, in Jubilees when Noah was praying to the Father and said, "Hey, we're dealing with all of these unclean spirits. Help," and so he's like, "Okay, I'll take 9/10 of them away, but I have to leave that 1/10 to perform their purpose," right? And so it falls right in line with the same fact that from the foundation of the world, there were people that were going to be born, that were not going to be written in the book of life, to be those host bodies for the NPC, the NPCs that would end up being a host body for those 1/10 of those 1/10 or the entirety of those unclean spirits. Yeah. So just really interesting how all that kind of fits together. Well, what do you say? End it on a bang?
Yeah, let's do it.
They will make war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is the Lord of Lords and King of Kings. Amen. Praise him. And he will be accompanied by his called and chosen and faithful ones. Then the angel said to me, "The waters you saw where the prostitute was seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns, the beast that you saw will hate the prostitute. They will leave her desolate and naked, and will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to carry out his purpose by uniting to give their kingdom to the beast until the words of God are fulfilled. Yeah. And the woman you saw is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth."
Well, and you got to think about it with this little section right here too. It says that they will hate her. They will leave her desolate. What did the demons and Satan have to do? They don't care about any religion. I mean, if you're a Satanist and you're trying to worship Baphomet or some demonic principality, you think that entity gives a diddly squat about you. Right. Satan doesn't care about your worship. He wants to destroy you because you represent the image of God. So any religious system tied, whether it's to worship humans, demons, angels, whatever, they don't care about this. The beast doesn't care about it. He's only using as a means to an end to destroy the people that are image bearers of God. So that's why I believe that this whole system, this is about the system that has been, this religious system that has been carried along by the kings and rulers, and the epitome of it happens here. It's left because the beast, and they don't have any use for it. What's the point of this religious system? They're finally at the end of it. It's like, who cares? What does it matter if we're getting
it literally, you just quoted what, like Geordie Rose, the guy behind D-Wave and the AI transhumanist thing that they've got going on, and how he referred to AI and
the great old ones.
Great old ones, and how they view us. They don't care about you. I think the way he said it was that they look at you like an ant. They could care less whether they step on you. If you happen to get out of the way, great. But they have one sole intent, and we know what that is. It's to rebel and to be against the kingdom of God, and those that are part of that kingdom. Yeah. And so they will use anything and everything in their power and their ability to achieve that end, right? But
if you just imagine, right, all of the Illuminati systems, like, for lack of a better word, that term, right, the Freemasons, these mystery religions, these Babylonian rituals, these Aleister Crowley type people, it's only been a means to the end. And what do they do to that religious system? It says they leave it desolate and naked, which means all the fine golds, and this can even be Roman Catholicism or false Christianity, whatever you want to apply it to, regardless, it's stripped, it's desolate. I mean, it says she has fine linens and gold cups, and she's adorned with gold and all kinds of stuff. She has nothing by the end of this. And she's naked, and they eat her flesh and burn her. They literally devour this religious system because it means nothing to them. Like
Right.
it's, I mean, so all the people that follow this because they're enamored by the signs and wonders, it means absolutely nothing. It means to the end.
Yeah. What do you think about verse 18? Do you think that when you talk about the great city, do you think that's literally referring to Jerusalem, not the new Jerusalem, but Jerusalem and the power that sits currently in that nation state?
I don't think it doesn't reflect modern Jerusalem. You know what I mean?
Okay.
There's not enough like the way that I mean, I think there's an argument to be made for America as it stands now, but that's really shoving modern times into it. You'd really have to look at a ruling system that's been here since the time of Nimrod. And I think that, again, with what I've studied, is that whole genetic lineage aspect all the way back from, Noah, Adam and Eve, all the way down. There's like this ruling elite class that was given to the people of God. And because of Samuel and Solomon, or David and Solomon, sorry, their fornication with women outside of their what they were called to, they
Right.
literally gave their seed the power, the ruling that was the ruling staff that was given between Judah's legs and was never supposed to leave there, given that out to the powers of the world. So to the kings, like when you look at that whole video, I don't know if you guys have all seen it. It was part of my presentation, A Take on the World, where it has this little 9-year-old girl. It was like in 3rd grade or whatever, and she went through and did all the genealogies for all the presidents and found that all but one of them are related to King John Laughlin from England. So every president all the way up to Obama has been related, except for, like, I can't even remember who it was. They all share a genetic bloodline. They're all second, third, and fourth.
I thought there was an addendum to that found that actually that one that they thought wasn't part of it actually was.
Oh, it's possible.
Yeah, I think I'd looked at that fairly recently, several months ago, and I thought there was kind of an addendum to that found that the one missing link that they're like, yeah, we couldn't find this one out. Actually, I think through all of the how many people were digging into like the ancestry and looking at, and someone found something that pointed to the one that was missing. Sure. Actually was part of the same bloodline. But
yeah, I mean, back to that, I mean, I've seen the great city. I don't know, maybe it hasn't been revealed yet, or maybe it's a secret city, or
that's kind of where I'm at, because so you ever watch Gulliver's Travels?
Yep.
So Laputa, the floating city.
Yeah.
I think that's where. So we know that the dragon, Hasatan, the adversary, is the prince of the powers of the air. He's the one that rules the nations of the world currently, and I think that's where he sits. I think it's a real place. And
so
I think are you
viewing that as like the same place as the Mount of the Assembly with the council? So like that,
exactly
that place that Enoch went, that had the mountain that was there, and where Jesus was taken to and shown the whole world, like that place.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, because I think that's the great city that gets cast down, and when he completes all this stuff, that's because we've tried for so long to try and fit, like for example, Revelation 17:18, we tried to fit that into what we currently see, whether it's right. America or the nation state of Israel, Jerusalem, the modern city of Jerusalem. I just don't think that's what fits with the rest of the story, right? Because we've looked at, there's a literal understanding, literal meaning to all this other stuff, and we've started to be able to identify these characters. And I just think that this is the part where, hey, that's all of these kings, these 10 kings that gave their power to the dragon, to be able, and then he gives it to the beast to enact his will and whatnot. I just don't think that he's been hanging out where we could just accidentally bump into
Well, yeah,
him,
no, and I think you're absolutely correct, because the council was part of the separation at Babylon. Of course, we're going back to Nimrod again.
Right.
So or Babel, right? The separation of Babel, where they were divided 70 tribes. God took one, and the rest went out to the 70. They were divided up by the 70 angels, who are the council members, who are chastised in Psalm. They're called Elohim. They're the council, or the Elohim of God. So when God's chastising Elohim, and I think it's Psalms 82, he's not speaking to himself or the Trinity or Yeshua. He's speaking to these council, these members that were supposed to be praying and interceding for men, and they decided to take worship for themselves. So again, we go back to this system of worship, where these things, again, they're viewing it as long as I'm getting the worship for it, these like elder gods, these like, the elder gods of like ancient mythologies and stuff like that. As long as I'm getting the worship and God's not, then I'm going to absorb that or whatever. But again, once it comes down to the final end of it, that those religions, those things like the Freemasons, if you go to the United States Capitol, I think it's inside the State House, or the Senate, they have the apotheosis of Abraham, or the apotheosis of Washington. It's on the dome, where I think it's at the Senate, right? And it has 72 stars that line around it with all of the gods, the ancient gods and mythologies. Those 72 stars, I was like, we keep seeing the 72, this council number, all over and over and over again. And I was like, but only 70 of them were divided out. And one of them, we know one of those angels is Michael, who is the protector of Israel. And he's called upon when, there's that whole thing where I think it's Daniel is praying, and the angel gets stopped by the prince of Persia. That was the council member over Persia. And he had to call on Michael to come fight this thing off, because they share the same rank, I guess you would say. But Michael was still able to defeat him, because Michael is one of the most powerful. But the regular messenger angel was not able to take this thing on. So this thing was given a lot of power and control. And I think this is what it says when it says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against spirits in high places and wickedness.
Literally, it takes that whole literal definition to a whole new meaning. Just like literally, once you start incorporating biblical cosmology into the understanding, realizing if that's the case, where do eclipses come from and all the, that's just a whole other topic. But, you start seeing this and realize that this prince of the power of the air, right, and these powers and principalities in high places, it's a literal definition and literal description of what's going on here, that it's not some mythical fourth dimension type of thing that it's referencing. While the spiritual realm is real, he operates in the physical as well. And I think that's the place where he, I guess, puts his head down to sleep, and so it's just been interesting as I've started uncovering this, because this was not my perception 6 months ago. A lot of this is a newfound understanding that's, actually getting in and doing exactly what we're doing now, and getting and studying it for myself, and finding out that what I believed before just didn't fit with scripture, just because it's been recycled and everything's been mashed on top of each other, and everyone wants to sell a book. And so they, try to put something out that no one else has put out before. And it's this new great eschatological understanding and timeline and all this stuff. And then it sells like wildfire and gets passed on as theological
truth.
Who
said it. They said, if you want to sell a book, write an end times book. If you want to be number one bestseller, just write
John
an end times
Hagee
book.
or something.
Hey,
that's name drop. Sorry.
In the chat here, White Wabbit Warrior. Sorry saying that 3 times fast. All the major leaders met Monday through Wednesday today to do final draft of global pandemic treaty plan and its writing. Met with the WHO. Yeah, I saw it was UNESCO and the UN and everything. They're trying to come together to prepare for the next global pandemic. And I've been saying this for this whole thing that was happening up to this point, that this was preparation for something bigger. And, we've seen with Bill Gates coming out and talking about smallpox. And then, about a month and a half, 2 months later, they found smallpox vials in Philadelphia. They literally, guys, they are trying to, I think that's the mentality, is that trying to bring on the end times. But the thing is, though, This is only going to happen at God's time, and we got to stop giving the Illuminati and the Masons and the Jesuits, giving them more credit than what they're due. Like, they will try to do things, but it's God's timing and when this is actually going to happen. So, yes, they're going to try to one world government. They're trying to one world currency. They're trying to one world religion. Because in the rabbinical Kabbalist, Judaism, they believe that they have to summon the Messiah, the Mashiach. That only if they build the temple and they return the Jews back to Israel will the Messiah come. Well, that means they're trying to force the Messiah. And we see the same thing happen in Islam, where they're trying to get their 12th imam, and they have to do certain things to get the imam to come. So they're literally trying to force the apocalypse to happen or the end times to happen before it's meant to happen. And so, yes, these are all precursors because they're testing the water. Eventually, one of these is going to stick, and it's gonna shoot off, and we're gonna be. But these are why God, or Yeshua, calls it the birth pains. They start. They're
as progressively worse,
and they get progressively worse and worse and closer and closer and closer. And I don't know if anybody that I was there with both of my kids, all three of my kids being born, and it is. Where it's like, okay, I can tolerate this, I can tolerate this, I can tolerate this. It's like, oh my God, I want to rip your head off. So it does get bad. And then it starts getting closer, and then boom, it happens. So that's what we're going to keep seeing as we're going to keep progressing and seeing this. We're going to be seeing more mentions of the New World Order, an agenda to move forward. And, whatever they're trying to do to kill off populations and stuff, they're trying to force the apocalypse to happen. And we just read right here where it says that God is the one that's in control, and he's the one that's actually guiding them to set these pillars up so that this can eventually end up happening. But it's a slow burn process. It's cooking, like cooking a frog or whatever in a boiling pot. For those of us who are in the know, who have the Holy Spirit, God says, or Yeshua says, I won't return like a thief for you. You're going to know. You're going to know the times and the seasons. But for the rest of the world, it's a slow boil for them, unfortunately.
Yeah. Have you got to check out? I know you watched Kingdom in Context. Sean Griffin over there, his new series called Kingdom Come. The first episode. I saw it came up, but I haven't got to watch it. The first episode was on fire, dude. It was it was called They Know, and it's literally talking about what you were talking about just now, where it goes over, he goes and looks at different groups of people. He looks at like angels, he looks at the demons, he looks at rulers of the earth, and looks at a whole bunch of different like demographics, right? And whether they know what's coming, right? And at the end of it, like they all know. He's like, don't be left out of the know, right? Like to be in the know, to see what's happening, to truly dive in and start absorbing the word, making the changes that's needed in your life, and self-reflecting and doing what he's calling us to do, and learning the art of obedience. That's not something that comes easy. It will push you way farther out of your comfort zone than you ever could possibly imagine. But obedience literally is going to put you in the know. You start obeying, it starts unlocking untapped numbers of truth, of understanding for what's coming. Guess what? It also unlocks an enormous amount of peace. In this verse right here, I think it's summed up. Right. I mean, you can't say it too, man. You can't say it better
with this one. Yeah, that's the best part.
I mean, that's the title of it. What's the title of today's show?
Victory of the Lamb and His Overcomers.
Dude, I mean, how better to end off than repeating this part where it says, "They will make war against him, and they will fail. The Lamb will triumph over them, because he is the Lord of Lords and he's the King of Kings, and he will be accompanied by his elect, his called, his chosen, his faithful ones." And so don't be left out of the know. Make sure you're making the changes in your life that he's called you to, and like we talked about at the beginning of the show, it's going to look different than what we're seeing in a lot of these communities. It's going to be patient, loving people that aren't at the same place as you are. It's going to be full of empathetic and understanding that you were once in the same exact shoes, and that you don't have anything more than they do. And this is all that we hold to, is that he's going to overcome for us. He's going to be the one that empowers us to endure to the end. and it's going to be him that takes care of all this until verse 17, until the words of God are fulfilled, right? Like until he wraps it all up, he's going to be the one that's empowering us and strengthening us to be the light of the world. I mean, the salt of the earth, and I think we still have a calling to make sure. I don't think we should read where we read that the angel's going to do all that last minute proclaiming of the gospel. I don't think that should be a get out of jail free card for us. I think that's his prerogative to have someone that comes up and cleans behind us. But I still think that he meant what he said when he said, go into all the world and make taught ones, make disciples, and truly not just smash them in the head with the Bible and then leave them cold and bloody on the street, like the guy on the Samaritan road. Right. It's about more than that. It's about truly coming alongside. It's not about just always being out in front and telling everybody to follow you. It's about coming alongside, going behind and lifting up and supporting and truly caring about those that are around us. And if that's not, I feel like that if that's not what comes to your mind and that's not what comes into your heart when you think about the best way to serve God, because whatever you do for the least of these, it's like you're doing it for me, right? So if we're not doing that, we should probably do a little bit of self-evaluation and say, hey, how can I be doing that more? So that's my little bit to end it off with. Was there anything else that you wanted to?
No, I think we should open it up
to end off with.
Yeah, open it up for questions. We got some people in the chat.
Sure.
I can see at least 27 of you guys in there. If you guys want to throw any questions, do it all in caps here while we're going, and we'll try to read off if you have any questions or anything that's relative to what we just read, and we'll try to answer those out. But yeah, it was interesting, and I think it's awesome. I hope you guys are doing this at the same time that we are and paralleling your studies and trying to find more information about this. And I hope it's getting you to dig in and read some more stuff, because that's what we're doing. We're like, hey, we talked about this, and we'll call each other and be like, hey man, I just saw this and I just saw this. So it's cool, because it seems like every time I read through prophecy and end times, eschatology, I always find something new, and always something that's like, how did I not see that before? And I love it. Right. So that's what makes the Bible, so real. The Bible's like 90% prophecy. Right. It's prophesying about, things to come, things that are that are cyclical in nature, and things that, of the Messiah, and then things of the Messiah's return. So it's just crazy to see all of it tied together. And it's just this one long underlying theme, and all of these multiple different stories written by, how many authors would they say? It was 30 or 60 something.
I can't even remember.
Yeah, it's a lot.
It's even more because there was books taken out.
Right, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely. I don't see any questions quite yet, but if you guys have anything that you wanted to bring up, any topics that you wanted to bring up, if anything tonight kind of jarred your memory, or have any questions that you want to get answered, or just anything that you want to discuss, throw it in there, all caps, and we'd love to have some time to just chat about it and see what's on your guys' mind.
Lico said 40, so 40 different authors.
Okay.
66 plus up to 88 to maybe even 100
right.
Textual documents. Dude,
right.
I read it before, but I did not realize that the Book of Giants was actually a Dead Sea Scroll document. So
Giants? Okay.
Yeah, I because I've read it several times, and I was like, well, this fits with some stuff. I don't know that it's not Jewish fan fiction, but there is some really cool, war of the giants versus giants, thing going on. That's pretty interesting.
Would that be is it kind of, because I've not read it, is that more kind of centered around the time frame of like right before the flood? Is that kind of the time frame?
Yeah,
post-flood?
It's
okay.
I think it's in that one where it describes, this is where it gets kind of weird and fishy, that there's I think God, like it was that Gog, I think it was Gog? No, it was Og of Bashan, that he was pre-flood, and that he like hung onto the back of the boat or something like that. and that he was on the other side. But there's like this whole thing about there were
okay, hold on. You just said something. Have you ever seen the movie Noah with Russell Crowe?
Yeah, it was awful.
But the one thing that was in there, heard anything about it. I didn't know if it was like completely just like creative authority. But like the one guy who like literally uses like a tomahawk and like bashes his way into the ark. Do you think that's kind of where that comes from? That he made it like onto the other side of the flood.
I don't know. I've heard different perspectives that there were even up to 120 some people that they took on to the ark, and there were people that I've heard small desolation theory where it was localized, it wasn't full world. So I don't know. I mean, I've heard a lot of different things.
I feel like you have to ignore quite a bit of scripture to say that it wasn't everything.
Yeah, and I mean, to me, like I said, I did that whole math for like 7 pairs of clean, 2 pairs of unclean, and then I'm like, that's 8 pairs, and then there's, 7 clean people and 1 unclean person, on the boat. I think those were symbolic numbers, and I don't think it was 120 people or a giant hanging on the back. There's a possibility. I don't know, the whole underground giant thing. And well, you got to go, baby. I'm still on here.
Co-host number 2.
But I mean, it doesn't explain, like all of the giants in America and South America. My daughter's trying to turn my computer off.
Uh-oh.
Hopefully she didn't just kill my stream.
I think we're still alive.
Okay. She just turned my power button off. Okay. Yeah, so Willow, you need to go. Come on. All right. Are we still live? Because I thought she turned my internet off. So,
oh, did she?
I mean, thought so.
It still looks like it.
All right, we're good. So I forgot what's happening. I'm getting distracted from my daughter here.
Oh, good.
Rachel. Anyways, go ahead. What were you saying, man? Sorry.
Oh yeah, I think some of the stuff that's that Rob Skiba did, and looking at like pretty much debunking the fact that there was multiple incursions of like fallen angels and them being with human women and whatnot, but more so that there was passed on through the genetics of the wives, at least the wives of Noah's sons and whatnot, because it said that all flesh had been corrupted at some point or at some level. So that's how giants ended up coming back on the other side of flood. But it's interesting, just looking at other perspectives for sure.
All right. So my daughter's just chatting up with a conversation back here by herself. I had to mute the microphone. Well, again, we'll put it out here in case anybody didn't hear it. If you guys have any questions, make sure you put it in the live chat. And we'll try to answer them. We've got a couple, maybe 10 more minutes here. We can keep it open. But so as we're moving on, we may be able to get everything in next week's, hopefully. So, and then I'd like to see if we can't get at least one episode where we kind of hit Ezekiel and Daniel and some of the stuff Jesus talks about, and Ezra and Baruch. I mean, there's a ton.
And just tie all those back into what we've already looked at and see. It would be tough to go over every single one and find its exact correlation, but because we've gone over fairly in depth with all the points and the topics that find themselves, strung through all of Revelation, it should be pretty easy to see the correlations when we go and look at all those other things. We'll be able to see those specific markers and be able to overlay them right on top of what we've already seen. And so I think that's just it may not give a ton more information on what we've already looked at, but you'll see the continuity, that exists all throughout Scripture, for sure. At least in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions in here, but our regulars aren't in here tonight. I'm kind of I'm gonna have to get on them. I'll have to go hit them up and be like, we don't show up for 1 week and then you guys don't come back now.
No, but it means there's quite a few people that either are first timers or
I'm seeing a lot of new names
regulars.
Here, so it's good to see you guys. Thank you for coming in. We normally call out everybody. I do see Patricia in here, but I see a Tyler, White Rabbit Warrior, White Rabbit Warrior, Ben Porter. And these are some new names we're seeing here. So it's awesome to see you guys in here. Thanks for joining us. Let's see. Ben said something that once the technology can change people, it may be able to make people bigger than normal. I don't know. Transhuman agendas. I mean,
totally agree.
The enemy definitely works in a multi-pronged attack. So they're not only attacking genetics, but they're working on transhuman agenda with transferring of consciousness, and then also the soul aspect, the spiritual aspect, and the occult. They always do a multi-prong attack. If one doesn't stick, then they'll run with the other one. So we're going to still continue to see that genetic manipulation, the what is it, the hybridization of humans and genetic manipulation, but then also the AI technologies, the merging with the internet and all that kind of stuff. It's just going to keep going. And, one or the other may not work. And so they'll just continue pushing forward with the other. And we still got CERN and all kinds of other stuff that they're still doing. So,
yeah. I think I saw a question there. I like hearing you say his name.
Who's that?
White Rabbit Warrior.
White Rabbit Warrior.
Yeah. It says,
like
what are your thoughts on animal souls like our pets? I sometimes wonder if pets will go with us. What I will say from my perspective on that, pets were not promised to be eternal. Like that was not part of their promise. I think once you read through like Jubilees and have an understanding that's at one point, especially while they were in the garden, and I don't know exactly when that's changed, but animals had the ability to speak, and so that points to having some type of higher mental abilities than is, I think, displayed today. I think that's why Balaam's donkey
wasn't such a big stretch.
That's not a big deal because that was how they were created, with that ability to, and so that I just and you've seen so much. We can't act like the animal, like the predictive programming that we see in like kids movies, all these talking animals and all that stuff. They get that from somewhere.
Sure.
Like that. They're not that creative. So on that point, I would say. I don't think they were promised. I think there will be animals in the kingdom. I think it's pretty clear. There's a lot of scripture that points to that. I just don't know if it will be specific. Well, okay. So do you remember when we talked? May have been like first or second episode when we talked about like the four living creatures and how they kind of their characteristics were kind of like that of like guard dogs, like that were super jealous. It said they were jealous for, is that in the Apocalypse of Abraham? I think that
we talked about the four living ones. They had to turn their faces,
turn them around so they wouldn't get at each other because they were so jealous. It said they were so jealous for the Most High. So if you kind of take that and like apply it just like to dogs, it's always been called like man's best friend and whatnot. That some of those same type of attributes are displayed there. So I don't think that it's too far of a stretch to say that they weren't put here for a specific reason, and that there may be some type of different version, or that we kind of see like because a lot of us have had multiple pets throughout our lifetime, and for me, for example, I've seen a lot of the same characteristics in a lot of the pets that I've had, that it kind of has carried on through the different pets that I've had. So I don't think there's anything wrong with theorizing that may be possible, but I just don't know that there's a ton of scriptural evidence that would say that they're going to be there, like in a way that we know, hey, that was my pet and he's here now, like it's not quite going to be like all dogs go to heaven type of scenario. But what are your thoughts?
I agree with you. I think there's going to be a lot more duty and wonder and amazement at all the things that we're going to see when we partake in the resurrection, that, worrying about our pet goldfish is probably going to be low on the scale. I mean, we're going to be seeing our ancestors and speaking with the patriarchs and walking on streets of gold. Everything we would value and cherish in this world is literally the dirt and ground we walk on, and the walls are made of the most elaborate and expensive things. So because we love our pets. I mean, that's right. And then maybe that there's, we're going to have far greater memories and we have the ability to project. I mean, angels can project visions. So who's to say that we couldn't, project memories or something like that of our animals, and almost like this, I always wonder if like the virtual reality thing that they're pushing isn't some form of, again, it's always mimicking things of the heavens, it's corrupting those things, but it's some way we could kind of step into some memory of family and animals and pets, and it would just be like getting to hug and pet your animal again. Because I mean, there's a lot that we don't fully understand with this new body that we're going to get. But it says
Sure.
we're going to be like Jesus, and he was able to transfigure to walk through solid objects, but then also still be tangible and be able to touch his disciples or not touch his disciples and eat and all these things. So there's a lot of stuff that we're going to be able to do that is probably beyond our understanding at this point, being finite beings. But, I think there will still be memories. It's not like you're going to forget everything. And maybe even some kind of, way to relive those and like without having a human brain and actually live those in a time where it's like you can actually go back and play in the yard with your dog or something like that, but it'd be like a vision or something. I'm
Sure.
sure there's going to be a lot of amazing things that we can't even understand that are going to kind of fulfill all of those needs to where, because it says that God wipes away all the tears. So he doesn't want you shedding tears for animals and things like that. There's going to be a way. God is going to set up a way that all of those questions and all those things are going to be taken care of and answered and fulfilled to where we're not going to be lacking at that point.
I like Doc's answer. He said, "Love surpasses all bounds of time or physicality."
Yeah.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, I think there's if they're not there, and if we don't have any way to interact with them at all, we're not gonna be at peace about it. It's not going to be an emotional thing where we're feeling angst or
No, you know what I think we'll end up seeing is like that God put certain animals in our lives for, like
certain seasons.
we're going to see
and
those
different
things
times.
and be like,
Yeah.
oh my God, that's so awesome that like I needed that cat at that certain time or
Yeah.
that dog at this certain time. Like we're going to see that God's inspiration was in that with those animals, and they may have been protecting us and scaring off, we're going to see so much and we'll be like, oh my God, that's so awesome. Like, I think we're just going to be
Right.
blown away by the mundane, the things that we take for granted today, on how much God's hands and working was in it. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No, you're good. Yeah. Well, do you guys have any other questions? I appreciate the questions that we did get to discuss tonight, and still have just a few more minutes. If there was any last minute things that you guys wanted to bring up, anything kind of related to the topic tonight, or anything else that you got going on, let us know.
yeah. Other than that, guys, if you don't have any questions and you're coming to the end of this show, make sure you guys are liking and sharing and subscribing and, commenting outside of the chat. Comment below. Tell us what you like, what you don't, what you want to see. Yeah, because we gotta fight against Al Gore's rhythm and the YouTube. That powers the YouTube boat. So, of course, they want to silence all opinions like ours. And, the only way that you can help defeat that is by sharing this out and doing your due diligence to be part of the resistance. So if you guys aren't a part of the resistance, speaking of which, you can go to Facebook platform and look up SITREP Resistance. We have our TV page and a fellowship page. There's over 1,000 people there that you can reach out to for prayer. I mean, there are people that get on there and they do Bible readings and all kinds of stuff. We have lots of people who've been on the show who do their own channel things and share them to there. There's a lot of content that goes on over there. So if you guys haven't been a part of that, make sure you guys do that. SITREP Resistance page is back up. I got it. It's in my name. I took it from Ian. It needs some work. So that is still up, sitrepresistance.com. The donation page is up. If you guys feel led, we don't ever ask for it. If you feel like supporting the ministry, because it does cost to keep the website going and to pay the power bills and the internet and all that kind of stuff, if you do feel like donating, you can do that over there through PayPal. I don't know what else to add. That's pretty much all I have.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys showing up tonight. It was good to see you guys all in the chat. Love when you guys are interacting with the discussion that we're having, especially when it's different relevant perspectives and whatnot. Definitely love seeing that. I think there's more of that needed. This group interaction, surrounding the word and coming together in search of these things that are in the word. And I think we're specifically instructed to do this, to test all these things and to come together and reason these things out, and sometimes debate, sometimes agree, but at the end of the day end up loving one another even more, right?
So Tyler just asked, what is the first fruits in Matthew 27:52? I wonder if this is going to parallel what we talked about earlier with 144,000.
Well, I can bring it up real quick. Hold on, let me got a second. I can go ahead and share my screen here. We can just go take a quick look. What was the address again? 27
Matthew 27:52.
So it says, the tombs broke open and the bodies of many saints who had fallen asleep were raised. After Jesus' resurrection, they had come out of the tombs. They entered the holy city and appeared to many people. Yeah, definitely kind of what we were talking about earlier, in reference to the first fruits, the 144,000. Definitely postulated that this could have been exactly that, those 144,000. I'm not sure. It says many saints. So, I mean, I guess at that time, 144,000 people probably would fit the qualifier of many, especially in that kind of that environment. So very well could have been it, because we know that Yeshua was the first fruits, the first of the first fruits. If there was multiple, I think for a lot of people, we've always kind of put him as the only first fruits. But I've always struggled with how to reckon this verse and kind of where it fit in and what was talked to, what happened. Like, it just, I hate fade to black, like it says they appeared to many people and then nothing. Right. Yeah. So.
Yep. I think he took them with him. I think, they may have been, they says they followed him wherever he went. So if he went to heaven, they went with him. I mean, if that is applied scripture to them, he says he goes to prepare a place for us. Maybe they were there helping him. It's like you were saying, maybe they were part of that foundational structure of those people that are rebuilding or building that temple over the last 2,000 years, that's coming back. So,
friends of the bridegroom.
Yeah. Ben Porter was talking about, God put 20 chickens in my life and it's been great for the last year. It has brought me certain calm and patience he can only give me through these birds. Well, you were speaking to two bird parents ourselves. I've got, I got one rooster and 5 chickens now because we lost 2 of them here recently. And how many do you have, Daniel?
I think I'm sitting at 15 currently. I had to look out my window, like it's still out there this late, but 15 hens, and they won't leave me alone when I go out there. So
yeah, we love us some chickens, even though they're a pain in the butt and tear our yards up and all kinds of stuff, but poop everywhere. But we love them. So, yep.
Can't have lawn furniture in the backyard anymore.
I put rocks down all around my house, man, and they just rut through it and then throw them all back out into the yard. I'm
flinging them back in the grass.
Killing me, guys. All right. Well, yeah, I didn't see anything else, guys. We appreciate everybody jumping in and being a part of the chat and following along, guys. We thank you guys again for tuning in. We're going to do this again next Wednesday. We do this every single Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern time. Again, we launch all this stuff on this platform, on the Take on the World platform, as well as SITREP Resistance TV, and we post it up on our SITREP Resistance Fellowship page, guys. So go check all those out at sitrepresistance.com. Daniel, you got anything you want to close out with?
Shalom, homies. You guys have a good one.
Yeah. God bless and keep you guys tonight. And like I said, if you guys do celebrate Hanukkah, happy Hanukkah. If you don't, we love you guys anyways. No hate here. You do you and spend time with God. That's all that matters. Build your relationship up, guys, and then build somebody else up to, that's what we need to be doing. We need to stop tearing each other down. So be a good
love God and love people.
Yep. All right, guys, we love you, and we will see you next week. Have a good night, guys.
Shalom.